Thank you. Having said that, it is 6 p.m. and we are hereby calling to order the successor agency to the San Fernando Redevelopment Agency meeting, beginning with roll call. Ms. Fritz?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Let's see. Chair Joel Fajardo.
Present.
Vice Chair Hector A. Pacheco. Is he absent? Okay. Noted. Board Member Sylvia Ballin.
Present.
Board Member Robert C. Gonzalez. He too is absent. Board Member Mary Mendoza.
Present.
Thank you. We have a quorum. I will move to approve the agenda for the successor agency meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
A second by Mendoza. Roll call, please, Ms. Fritz.
Yes. Chair Joel Fajardo.
Yes.
Vice Chair Hector A. Pacheco. He is absent. Board Member Sylvia Ballin.
Yes.
Board Member Robert C. Gonzalez is absent. And Board Member Mary Mendoza.
Yes.
The motion carries. Ms. Fritz, are there any public statements for the successor agency meeting?
No, there have been no public statements submitted today.
Thank you. I will move to approve the consent calendar. Is there a second?
Oh, I wanted to pull an item.
This is for the successor agency meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, no, I'm good.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please. Ms. Fritz?
Yes, Chair Joel Fajardo.
Yes.
Chair Joel Fajardo.
Yes.
Vice Chair Hector A. Pacheco is absent. Board Member Sylvia Ballin.
Yes.
Board Member Robert C. Gonzalez is absent. Board Member Mary Mendoza.
Yes.
The motion carries. At this point, is there any agency discussion? It appears there is none. Is there any staff communication, Mr. Kimball?
None for the agency.
Thank you. I will move to adjourn the successor agency meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ballin. Roll call, please, Ms. Fritz.
Chair Joel Fajardo.
Yes.
Vice Chair Hector A. Pacheco, he is absent. Board Member Sylvia Ballin.
Yes.
Board Member Robert C. Gonzalez, and he is absent. Board Member Mary Mendoza.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries. The successor agency meeting is hereby adjourned. It is now 6:03 p.m. and I will call to order the regular San Fernando City Council meeting, once again beginning with roll call. Ms. Fritz?
Yes, Mr. Mayor Joel Fajardo.
Here.
Vice Chair Hector A. Pacheco is absent. Councilmember Sylvia Ballin.
Present.
Councilmember Robert C. Gonzalez. He is absent. Councilmember Mary Mendoza.
Present.
Thank you. We have a quorum. If we will all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, which I will lead. Please place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of
of the
America,
States of America,
to the republic,
to the republic,
which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. With regards to the approval of the agenda, I was advised by staff that the content of item number 3 is inadvertently included in the packet under item number 4 and vice versa. And so in making this motion, I will move to approve the agenda. However, restoring the content of item number 3, which is currently under number 4, back to item number 3, and the content for item number 4, which is currently under item number 3, back to item number 4. Having said that, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please. Ms. Fritz?
Mayor Joel Fajardo.
Yes.
Yes. Vice Mayor Hector A. Pacheco, absent. Councilmember Sylvia Ballin.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert C. Gonzalez, he is absent. And Councilmember Mary Mendoza.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries. I would also like to announce that I will be leaving the city council meeting early. We were advised by Vice Mayor Pacheco that he would be attending the regular city council meeting. However, he will be approximately 5 minutes late. Having said that, decorum and order are posted in the agenda, and we are now at public statements. Ms. Fritz, do we have any public statements for the regular San Fernando City Council meeting?
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, we do not have any public statements submitted.
Thank you. At this time, therefore, we will close public statements and we will move to the consent calendar. I will move to approve the consent calendar with the previous revisions as made, in such stating that the content in item number 4 that belongs to number 3 shall return to item number 3. Is there a second to approve the consent calendar with these changes?
I would like to pull item number 3. That's the
Okay.
consideration
Thank you.
with the business license penalty fee.
Excellent. And the content has already been restored to each of those agenda items, so we will not need to re-specify that. Therefore, the motion is to approve the consent calendar inclusive of items 1 and 2, but removing item 3 for discussion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mendoza. Roll call, please, Ms. Fritz.
That chicken you gave Blue outside?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Mayor Joel Fajardo.
Yes.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Hector A. Pacheco, he is absent. Councilmember Sylvia Ballin.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert C. Gonzalez. Looks like he's trying to connect, but at the moment he is absent for this. And Councilmember Mary Mendoza.
She's on mute.
Hello.
Hi, Councilmember Mendoza, you're on mute, although it looks like you're
Yes, I'm having a little difficulty with my tablet, but yes.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, did Councilmember Gonzalez vote on this, the approval of the consent calendar with items 1 and 2?
Excuse me. We are on.
Consent calendar. Well, I think that when Ms. Fritz called his name, he was not yet connected, and therefore this item has passed with the 3 affirmative votes. But Mr. Gonzalez and Mr. Pacheco, just so you are aware, we are at the regular San Fernando City Council meeting right now.
Thank you.
In terms of items 1 and 2, the item number 3 was pulled for discussion. It was pulled by Councilmember Mendoza. Councilmember Mendoza, would you like to lead us on this discussion?
Yeah, I just like Mr. Kimball to explain it a little bit. I hope that some of the businesses are listening and that they, it's information that's important for them. So if you could just speak on that for a bit.
Yeah, will do. So this item was brought forth by City Council last week and directed staff to bring it to, or the last council meeting, directed staff to bring this forward. And this item is really just to waive fees or penalties for businesses that were unable to pay their business license prior to the March 1st deadline. The underlying business license in business tax for 2019 that was due in March 1st is still due. The city is just freezing and waiving the license fees until next year's renewal. This doesn't apply to any delinquent penalties from 2018 or years prior. This is really only specific to the current business license. And again, that was this council's effort to recognize the business community's financial troubles. So penalties will be suspended for this particular business license year. And that will be done automatically. However, if there are any businesses that would like to, contact the business license, HDL or want additional information, they can, they can email the city at finance@sfcity.org. And that's all I have, unless you have additional questions.
Councilmember Mendoza, any additional questions or comments?
No, I move to approve. Second.
Okay. Thank you. Councilmember Gonzalez, do you have any questions?
I have none. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Pacheco?
Yeah, I'm sorry, was there a budget impact on this? I'm flipping through it.
Yeah,
Right,
so currently the outstanding delinquent fees are a little over $30,000. So it's a little different because we're not necessarily we don't typically budget for penalties. They're not, that's really dependent on who pays. So, we're not changing the underlying budget, which is what businesses owe for income tax. We're really just be waiving the penalty fees, which are not typically a budgeted item anyway.
Right, and that comes out to around 30,000?
Yeah, that's how much is currently outstanding just on
Okay.
the penalty portion of it.
That's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no questions or comments. There was a first and a second. Ms. Clerk, could we proceed to roll call?
Yes. Mayor Joe Fajardo,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hector A. Pacheco.
Abstain?
He is abstained. To Councilmember Sylvia Ballin,
Yes.
Councilmember Robert C. Gonzalez,
Yes.
and Councilmember Mary Mendoza.
Yes.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. The motion carries. Having said that, we are now at item number 4. This is a discussion of the city's action regarding the coronavirus. After item 4, we will go to number 5, followed by 8 and 9, at which point I will depart. But item number 4 is our continued discussion of the coronavirus epidemic and how we are handling this. I have been closely tracking from the beginning the county's numbers with regards to the number of cases and the rate of transmission, and the city of San Fernando really has jumped these past couple of weeks. I have spoken with Mr. Kimball about what other state steps we could take to try and remedy or at least address this so that we make sure that we are following the best practices throughout the city. We spoke about a number of different considerations, such as sending out another mailer and asking our employees for feedback on services that we should be including, or how we should be continuing to, or how we should continue to reach out. Before we get to those other items, I would like to talk about a more targeted item that I had discussed with Mr. Kimball. I am someone who eats out quite regularly for many of my meals. And one of the challenges that I've seen throughout the county is that many restaurants are not following the safety guidelines that are put in place for being open as an essential business. And most notably, it pertains to the usage of masks and the handling of utensils. In many restaurants throughout the county that I've been to, including San Fernando, in some cases, no employees will be wearing any kind of face covering. In other cases, they will have it around their neck or around their chin, but not even around the mouth. In other cases, it's around the bottom half of the mouth, which I'm not sure is any bit effective given that it's not on the full mouth. And in another set of cases, it is on the mouth, but not the nose. And I'm not sure if it's required to be on the nose. I think that one of the reasons that restaurants are not necessarily following these orders is that some of these face coverings can be quite uncomfortable. If the restaurant is using anything other than the plastic covering that goes over one's face, or if they're using anything but the 100% cotton masks, the other masks, even if they look fancy, make it very hard to breathe, which is why I suspect that many people are choosing not to wear them. And so I've asked Mr. Kimball if we could have a procedure in place to address this. I think that the steps should include, first of all, reminding restaurants of this duty. Second of all, requiring that all places that serve food have a notice at the door as to how they can contact us if they happen to see people in the facility or any of the restaurant workers who are not wearing face coverings. And also utilizing city staff to periodically inspect restaurants unannounced to see if there is compliance. In addition to that, another problem that has arisen is how restaurants are distributing utensils. In many restaurants, the person who is handling the cash and the credit cards, as they hand you your bag, they are also grabbing and giving you utensils with the same gloves that have been used for multiple transactions. At another case in a restaurant in San Fernando, they forgot to give me a fork. And so I asked for a fork, and the attendant told me that I could grab it on my own, which only leads me to wonder how many other people have grabbed a fork that day from this container. And so Mr. Kimball and I discussed that two possible solutions would be to require that any restaurants providing utensils at this time do so in only if they are given in those pre-packaged utensil packets, or if it should be upon request. And I wanted to see if Mr. Kimball could speak to this point before going to the city council for general feedback.
Yeah, I mean, I think both of those are very salient points. You know, obviously we need to try to really start looking at ways to curb our number. As the mayor had mentioned, we have quite a few reported cases in San Fernando. So we, you know, we have been working with the county to see how those are reported. It is by address of the home address of the patient, and it's by census tract. And we feel pretty confident that they are that as long as the person is reporting their home address correctly, it's being correctly apportioned to us. However, we did have some follow-up questions regarding potential institutional settings, nursing homes, assisted living that may have had outbreaks that the county has not made us aware of, or other factors such as maybe we've had a lot more people get tested in San Fernando than in normal communities. So because there are more tests, there are more positives. So, you know, we're kind of working through that data a little bit, but obviously that will inform how we try to improve our response. And a few of the items the mayor brought up, you know, especially related to utensils, and, you know, similar to how, you know, the city of LA has made straws upon request. You know, that's one way to kind of minimize the number of hands that are dipping into the same cookie jar, so to speak, by either making them upon request or you know, individually wrapped utensils. And I think there's plus and minuses to each one of those ideas. However, both of them would probably help to reduce or minimize the number of sort of shared hands that are in here. So, and we did talk about a number of other items, and I don't know if you want to move on to other items.
Since this is one of the bigger ones,
Yeah,
we can
okay.
talk about this portion first and get the general feedback. So if there is direction, you can start working on that for the next meeting.
Yeah.
Councilmember Ballin?
Well, I am concerned about eating out at the restaurants, because I don't think some of them take the precautions that we should all be worried about right now. So there's something that we need to do, whether maybe they don't like you said, like a straw, Nick, if let the customer ask, do they want it or do they not? Personally, I would bring it home. I wouldn't sit in my car and eat it, and I would not need the utensils. But I think it should be an option. And even before the coronavirus, there were some of the restaurants here in the city that just had the plastic forks in a container. I don't know if they ever washed the container. So it kind of grossed me out. That concerns me. But I really believe, and I think when you talk to Councilmember Mendoza, I think that some of our takeout restaurant, the owner, but they have employees that maybe aren't quite aware of all the rules that they have to follow. So maybe just some educational material is what they need. But that's all I have for you. Yeah.
So do you have any feedback on the prepackaged utensil set?
I'm fine with that, but this is my concern, and this is why I say I'm almost like the straw. They're struggling already, and that's another big expense. But doesn't mean they shouldn't have it available if someone needs it and request it. But I would say by request, or just don't hand out a fork, a plastic fork. I just I'm okay with the prepackaged, but I would say by request. Every little dime that they get to save helps, and I'm sensitive to that. But I think it's more about educating the food service people that work here in the city.
Thank you. Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes, I agree that education is important. When I used to work, people already know what they need to do, but they need to be reminded and they need to be, shown how to do things. In terms of getting giving utensils out, I say don't give any out.
Yeah.
And if it's not an expense, just don't offer it unless they really want it. And there has to be, if it's an opened fork, then there has to be a process in which they hand it to the client or the customer. But pretty much that's it. Education, and don't give out any forks, any utensils. I mean, that really would take care of it completely. Don't giving them out unless they absolutely need it.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Thank you. Seems a little, I guess, difficult because as Councilmember Balin did say, our restaurants are already in a bad situation, and to now force them to get rid of all of their forks and have to go out and purchase, the single packaged, that might be rough, especially right now. I see nothing wrong with having a requirement of like the straws upon request. I know we talked about different types of usages for CDBG, and I know we're going to continue to discuss this, but would this be a case where we can use this type of funding to help our restaurants with educational pieces, or even possibly purchasing single-use or packaged forks for our residents? Our businesses. This could be like one of those grants that we talked about, grant opportunities where we can grant and, maybe buy in bulk and then at a cheaper price and then grant these out. I don't know. It's just an option.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Thank you so much. A couple quick questions for Nick and maybe even for the mayor, since you guys have been meeting regularly. I know. I'm very much in favor of us beginning to, now that we've been dealing with this pandemic for a couple months now, to kind of put into place more official and more long-standing rules. So I really like where the mayor is going with this, especially with restaurants. I personally think that single-use plastic is one of the worst things we can do for our Mother Earth, for our community, for the storm drains, for the gutters. And many communities, a lot of them are coastal communities, but they just straight out ban single-use plastic flatware. So if you're a McDonald's, you just don't give out plastic forks. If you, are a restaurant, you either give, a metal fork that you wash with a dine-in, or you don't offer a fork, and not only will that, to me, it's kind of like a blessing in disguise, and it can be something that we kind of get at this environmental disaster of single-use plastic. Even if we have to use the guise of coronavirus, which is very serious and very unfortunate, but this could be an opportunity to pass something like that. And I know the last time we talked about this, enforcement came up. I know we don't have a health department in like Los Angeles and so forth, but I think coronavirus warrants some sort of enforcement, some sort of, just like, you can get a citation for having your hedges too high. We need to empower our community officers, the ones that do these rounds, to begin to implement healthcare policy that the city council and Nick come up with together. It doesn't have to be, something as complicated or very robust, but I think we can all agree to some basic guidelines that we should be able to empower our city employees, like you said, Mr. Mayor, to help enforce. And just like our community cares about speeding tickets, and we empower our officers to give a speeding ticket, I think we are now in a world where people care about whether their food preparer is wearing a mask or not. And if the city of San Fernando has to pass, municipal regulations in order to make sure that grocery or chefs and so forth, food preparers are wearing masks, gloves, etc. Whatever it is that we come up with as sensible and reasonable, I think we may need that enforcement element. Maybe that's hiring somebody part-time. Maybe it's empowering one of our current employees to do it. Maybe it's hiring a new employee. But I don't think that we can get around this problem by not spending money and by not having some kind of enforcement mechanism. And so I think if we're all serious about tackling this issue, I think we can come up with these rules and really try to, enforce them. Nick, I wanted to ask you, if we came up with a policy that all city employees had to be tested like X times a month, one time a month, could you kind of speak to what kind of regulatory burden that might be, or like how much it would be to ask them to do that, or maybe something like temperature checks? Because we don't have control over a lot.
Yeah.
But I think we do have control over how often we ask our employees to be tested. And if that's something we have to cover out of our own coffers, I think, people might be fine with that. And so if you can kind of speak to what our city employees are currently doing as far as testing and staying home and monitoring symptoms and so forth, and what you think might be a sensible way to kind of pass enforceable rules in that regard, as far as our own employees, people that we can actually, control here.
Mr. Padilla had his hand up prior to talk about the restaurant issue, but I think he also come in on this one. So if you'd like to speak first, Mr. Padilla.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess we could stay on the testing issue first, but I did have some follow-up with respect to restaurants. With respect to the testing of employees, one of the things that has been discussed by a lot of cities of late is, the ability to perhaps check people's temperature or do other sort of minimal testing at the door as a condition to coming to work. And the general thought is that, with an unusual sort of contagious type of illness like COVID-19, something that we might not ordinarily have the ability to do, we may have the ability to do at this time for this specific purpose. But one thing that was emphasized is, or has been emphasized in these discussions, is that confidentiality for these employees who end up perhaps testing or showing signs is of paramount importance. We are not relieved of that obligation. And one of the chief challenges is figuring out a way to do this testing in a way that doesn't necessarily out people if it turns out that they're sick. So having, for example, if you're going to check people at the door for their temperature, having a way to do it in a confidential manner so that they're not literally standing around, 10 or 12 of their colleagues and, suddenly being diagnosed on the spot with showing symptoms of COVID-19. Those are all things we probably want to plan for if the goal is to ultimately start testing people at the door.
Okay, and thanks, Rich. And so just to kind of bring council up to speed a little, we actually have ordered a couple of the contactless thermometers. So, I think part of the discussion, in a little bit of a discussion with our labor union, we did discuss potential for, at a minimum, sort of doing temperature checks. I think employee groups tend to be open to that because, it's protecting themselves and fellow coworkers. So those are definitely things that we think we can work with the labor unions to figure out a way to properly implement that while also kind of protecting their the privacy of our employees and their members.
Can I ask you something real quick before you
Sure.
continue?
Uh-huh.
Do you think floating a proposal where they would get paid sick leave if they're tested positive would help mitigate anything? Or I think last time we spoke about it, you said, a lot of employees already have paid or already have sick leave, blah, blah, blah. But if they knew that they didn't have to dip into their bank, that they were getting this for the fact that the coronavirus is here and now, do you think that would play anything into, you had those discussions with the labor, I guess.
I would caution too that some of this is generally more spoken about in closed session. And so I guess, Mr. Kimball, as comfortable as you are discussing or answering that question, but knowing that if you want to provide other details, it can be discussed in closed session.
Sure. As far as a specific proposal, I agree with you, Mayor. We don't want to get any specific proposals unless we're sort of more in a closed session environment. However,
Mr. D had something to say to that, but I'll let you finish, Mr. Kimball.
Please.
However, with the CARES Act, no, it wasn't the CARES Act. It was the family, one of the federal acts, FFCRA or whatever, I don't know the acronym exactly, actually authorized 80 additional hours of COVID-related sick leave.
That was
so
the
all
point
of
I
our
was-
employees and any employees that have been impacted have used that leave bank.
Got it.
Right.
Got it. Okay.
That was the point I wanted to make, that there's already been some special legislation implemented to deal with issues. like that.
And Nick, so I know you've said before that, most of everybody at City Hall has been tested because we had cases there. Is there anything we can implement so that they have regular testing, or is that something you're a little wary of going down? I mean,
yeah, I'll just, the only reason I think we'd be a little hesitant is because currently we're trying to get, I know when I say I'm using the Southern California as we, to get to a certain capacity for testing where anyone can go and get tested regardless of whether or not they're symptomatic or they've had close contact with the symptomatic person. Heretofore, tests have been reserved for only people that are symptomatic or have had contact with someone that's symptomatic, and that's because of the limitations on the number of tests that can kind of be provided in a day. That being said, the county has been talking about how they're trying to get, and they expect very soon to get to a spot where anyone can get tested at any time that they want to, just without being symptomatic or getting in contact with someone that tested positive. I think as we get toward that goal, which again I think we're pretty close to that, it's something that we could consider a lot more closely. I think we would more want to facilitate that testing than require it for people that are completely asymptomatic. I think the easiest first step is to really monitor, make sure people aren't coming to work sick, so that doing temperature checks, I think, is a very prudent first step while we work toward more universal testing. I mean, I do want to remind, I do think that this is going to be around. I think everyone knows it's going to be around in some manner for 12 months. So I think very shortly we'll have that testing capacity where more people can get tested regardless of whether or not they have a reason.
I was under the impression that LA County already was able to offer testing to anybody that wanted one, but I think we're close then.
We're close,
right?
Very close, yeah.
Okay. Well, I think it's something for us to continue to consider. I mean, if it's going to be around for 12 months, I think we need to be testing as often as possible because, if you're asymptomatic and you're at the counter for a week and you're talking to people, I mean, you're spreading it. So, and one other thing that I had in mind, is it possible if we wanted to come up with this educational campaign, this information campaign, or what have you, for us to go through like HDL or business receipts and just identify which of our restaurants you know, and then just eat and just send this in the mail to the restaurants, like, hey, you know, here's an infographic about how you're supposed to do things, you know what I mean? Just to make sure that it goes to an exact restaurant, you know, I don't know if it's able to pull that kind of info or not.
Yeah.
But that's something we could utilize.
So just to kind of bring council up to speed on sort of some of our informational efforts, and I'll probably ask Tim to comment on it as well, because his folks have been doing a really great job on getting information out. But we, a couple weeks ago, we put together, or maybe it was only a week ago, but we got about 100 posters that were printed that had the counties for all of the businesses that were allowed to open, that had basically the standard social distancing protocol. You must wear a mask, you must stay 6 feet away, you know, from any other individuals, you know, and then it has an infographic that shows how the mask goes on. So we have distributed, and Tim's folks distributed about 100 of those, and we ran out. So we actually just got about 200 more printed at the end of last week. So we'll be passing out a lot more of those, and they have some of the updated information from the new order. And again, the intent is to have businesses post those inside, so that there's that infographic and the 5 or 6 requirements for social distancing. In addition to that, so we have done it only in Spanish. So only in English. We're gonna do another run of Spanish posters and pass those out. We actually also have floor decals. I'm sure you've seen them whenever you go out to some place that does have some sort of queuing. We have floor decals that we're giving out to businesses that, you know, say stand here, and they're kind of they have this.
Sure, yeah, there you go.
So we've been passing. We've passed.
Maybe a little San Fernando logo one on it. You know, we can be proud of this. Like,
yeah,
we can do. You know, I think we're on the right track. So what I'm trying to say, I guess, is, I don't know, maybe it takes an ad hoc, or maybe it takes a continued meeting on it, but I feel like we have to have a rallying around this new set of rules, or a some kind of informational campaign, or whatever it is, so that restaurants in particular are knowledgeable about the kind of safety regulations. And then to the mayor's point, I think we should consider legislating or passing policy that has some kind of enforcement to it, whether it's banning single-use plastics or requiring food preparers to wear masks, etc. I don't know if Mr. Padilla wants to chime in on that, but I think that's something that I would be willing to support as well.
Yeah, you know, first and foremost, you know, all of the county's executive orders concerning the Safer at Home policy, which regulate restaurants, among other things, have made it clear that local police departments, cities are essentially authorized to enforce the provisions of those Safer at Home orders. Now, I know it's maybe not something that police departments would want to prioritize. There are other, obviously, more immediately dangerous issues, but it is definitely something that cities have been granted discretion to enforce. If there is a restaurant that is doing any sort of service without people wearing face coverings, that would be a direct violation of the social distancing requirements, which are applicable to all restaurant businesses and most all other essential businesses as well. With respect to the single-use utensils, there are some restaurant-specific guidelines that the county has issued during the Safer at Home order. I think it might be worthwhile first to kind of compare what they say to maybe what we observe, or what the city is observing on the ground as being a deficiency, because perhaps there is a regulatory void that the city may want to consider filling. But I do recall there being some directives on making single-use utensils and the like being available upon request. I think that may already be a protocol that some of these restaurants are asked to do. What I would say is this, and I think this has been echoed by some of the other council members, is that there sometimes needs to be a little bit of a reminder factor for restaurants. I think as this pandemic has dragged on, and as people just get a little more comfortable with their day-to-day lives, they lose sight, particularly those on the, you know, in business, of what the mandates are. And these mandates were renewed just as recently as last Thursday, and they have not really changed. So they are as applicable now as they ever were when it comes to restaurants dining. There is no in-restaurant dining at this point in time. Everything has to be either delivery or curbside pickup. There has to be access to hand washing. There has to be face covering. And there have to be just general adherence to social distancing if you want to be in the restaurant business at this point in time.
Okay, and I'll just say on that note, when they are lifted, those stay-at-home orders are lifted, I think San Fernando doesn't necessarily have to relinquish all, ideas on face coverings and gloves. I think we should continue to explore that. So
Okay.
I'll just put a pin in on that one. And as far as why San Fernando might be getting so many more, I'll just end on this note. I think, unfortunately, similarly to a lot of other problems, we have pre-existing conditions here with our community, like obesity or problems with the air and have an effect with our asthma and so forth. And so investments that we can make to make our community healthier, outdoor equipment, walking trails, more trees, etc., those help all kinds of things, including coronavirus. And I know it's crazy to think about, but those are types of investments that really do help public health. But on that note, I'll yield my time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I did have a discussion with Mr. Kimball about this potentially being a way not just to address an issue related to coronavirus, but also have an environmentally friendly policy in the city. So I think that recognizing that this could be an environmental boon, even if we are a small city, it could have that domino effect that we need to start eliminating single-use plastics. At the same time, I think that now would be more challenging than ever to go too far on this with so many of these businesses facing economic challenges. But I think that if Mr. Kimball is able to put together some suggestions for policy ideas so that we can consider at the next council meeting, as well as reaching out to the restaurant owners to let them know that this item will be up for a formal discussion and even soliciting feedback, I think that that would be a tremendous help. So Mr. Kimball, given that you heard so many widespread and great ideas on this, do you feel that you have clear enough direction as to how to put a potential ordinance together and how to inform restaurants about this coming out without instilling fear into them that it's going to be too onerous?
Yes. And I do. I feel like we have plenty of direction, and thank you for all that feedback. I do want to take just a few minutes, if I can, to just sort of update council on some of the other actions that we'll be taking sort of this week to get information out. We sent out a postcard to all addresses in the city a few weeks ago when the first safer at home order came. We're going to take this opportunity to send out another postcard to all addresses that has more information on emphasizing the importance of social distancing. We'll try to get some things on that postcard so people look at it and don't just throw it away. That will be in English and Spanish. We are also going to make the last city manager's newsletter was kind of a coronavirus edition. So we're going to actually print out the coronavirus edition. We're going to do in English. We're also going to do a Spanish version. So we'll have two pages that we'll put in the water bill that will go out right around June 1st. So we'll send it to the House of the City will get that. Again, that's going to be a lot of information and resources on, what we do have some infographics on how to wear masks, how to keep yourself safe, what the requirements are when you go to a public place. We'll also sort of remind people to use the city's website for additional information on any of that stuff. So I just wanted to bring that up. And then I wanted to give Tim just a few minutes to his folks in code enforcement have actually been doing an amazing job getting out there and going into businesses that may not be operating, in strict accordance with the rules and really educating them and engaging them on how they should be operating. And for the most, when we see customers standing outside of a building without a face mask, we'll remind them, and we've been getting pretty good compliance. But Tim, if you want to take a minute just to kind of go over some of your code enforcement officers' experience and how we can help them do their job better.
Sure, Honorable Mayor and Council members. So I actually have one of the posters here that we provided. Somebody ate a part of it, so I felt it was safe for me to just save this one. And so what this really does is it gives a lot of the protocol instructions, easy to follow infographics, and then provides an area for the business to provide, what it lists out those social distancing protocols and provides them a place where they can, provide any special instructions, for instance, if they're doing curbside delivery off of some street or whatever it is, that they have that ability to do that here and then post this in their storefront. So as Nick was mentioning, code enforcement staff, they really are your boots on the street, addressing a lot of these issues at the ground floor level with individual businesses. We receive on a daily basis, comments or inquiries from members of the public or other businesses about, hey, what is compliance, or hey, I noticed this or I noticed that. And so we respond as soon as possible. In a lot of instances, that is that opportunity to provide that education to the businesses about what the protocols are. And a lot of times it's reminders, and frankly, there's no type of business or no type of property that we haven't been to over the last couple months. Whether it's restaurants, manufacturing facilities, supermarkets, barbershops, beauty salons, you name it. Our staff has been there trying to enforce this health order to keep people safe. And so we've been diligent about that, and that's a 7-day-a-week thing. Really, the majority of code enforcement focus has been focused on that. Another important piece of the enforcement education component is LA County and their public health department. So, they are, they're really the health department for the city of San Fernando as well. And so their staff is out in the community. They have staff that is, devoted to the North San Fernando Valley, and they are out doing checkups, doing education to restaurants and other facilities in the community as well. And we've gotten feedback from our business community that indeed is happening, and it's helped, how long it helps, how long people remember, when they forget, or does the message go from one shift to the next shift. Those are questions that are very valid, and that's why it is a constant effort.
Thank you. And so, Mr. Kimball, given that we've had, I appreciate that, such a wide breadth of recommendations, do you feel that you have sufficient enough direction? And how do you feel, secondly, about discussing altogether the eventual elimination of single-use plastic, whether or not it's strictly related to coronavirus?
So we have a sustainability ad hoc. I forget if that's the formal name.
Yeah, it's the green and sustainability, but I know that a lot of our projects got sidelined because of this.
Right, I agree, but I do think that that would be so going beyond sort of the utensils specific to the COVID response. I do believe that all of this would be good to kind of run through that ad hoc committee, because I think it's part of a larger, broader policy of the city. So I think that would be a good place to talk about some of these. But that being said, I think with regard specifically to the utensils, we want to dig a little deeper into the city attorney had mentioned something that might be in the county order. So I want to dig a little deeper into what exactly they have in that order to make sure, because that's something if it already prohibits or discourages single-use utensils, that's something we will probably highlight in our informational materials. Again, this week we're going to do a lot of staff's plan is to really hit the information cycle hard, because we have this new the revised order that came out, so it's kind of time to get a whole new set of postcards, emails, posters out to the businesses and residents. So, you know, we can definitely highlight the utensils if we do need to bring back something really, you know, an ordinance, because it's not silent or doesn't seem strong enough in the county order. We'll definitely bring that back soon.
And I think that even having a pictorial illustration of what's acceptable
Yeah.
for a face covering and what's not would be helpful, showing that on the chin doesn't work, half the mouth doesn't work. I don't know if the county order requires it to be on the nose as well for restaurant workers, but I think it does. If so, show like the only acceptable way to have it. And again, I let them know just the fact that some materials might be hard to breathe through, which might make their employees less likely to comply. If it's not the 100% cotton or the more expensive plastic coverings that come out about 6 inches. And so I think that providing all of those resources would be helpful.
Agreed. Yeah.
Councilmember Mendoza has a question.
Yeah, no, I don't have any questions. I just, I think that we really need to tap into the Los Angeles County because they just recently got over $1 billion in funding, which we're not a part of. So I think this is something, you know, that we should utilize as much of their funds or whatever they have available, services, posters, whatever they might have, their testing abilities. We need to utilize them. If I know we're going to ask them to share some of their money, but in the meantime, I think that we really need to look and see what services they can offer our community so that we can save our funding and use it for other items that are more important to our community, to our residents, and to our businesses. I just wanted to say that.
And thank you, Councilmember Mendoza, actually for bringing that up, because that is sort of another piece of this particular agenda item, Mr. Mayor, is that you know, there's a sample letter in the agenda attached from the mayor of Carson that has asked other cities in LA County to sign on, and I think just for the public's notice or for the public's information, only cities that have a population of over 500,000 people got direct funding, have received any funding to address the coronavirus response. So in our area, really, that's only City of LA and the County of LA. All of the other 87 cities in the county, no one has received any funding other than the CDBG funding that we'll be talking about a little later. But that CDBG funding has very, you know, specific parameters and can only be used in certain instances. It's not you know, any effort, any money, any funds that we're spending on this response is all just general tax dollars. None of it are funds that have come from the federal government. I mean, obviously, we're going to submit for reimbursement for a bunch of those funds. But I think just so that, you know, community knows, you know, we're staring at $2 million shortfall in the face this upcoming year, and so we're balancing that with obviously the need to spend money so that we can support the community. But I just, you know, I don't know if there's a thought out there, but San Fernando has not received any federal funds or any state funds for that matter to assist in our response, and neither of any of the other county cities. Really, the only two that received significant funds were City of LA, County of LA, and that is what's attached to this item. Is just you know, the mayor of Carson kind of reaching out and saying, listen, the city and county got this large, you know, like Councilmember Mendoza mentioned, over $1 billion worth of CARES Act direct funding, and none of that is being shared with cities, even though we're required to respond and enforce. So, and thank you for bringing that up, Councilmember Mendoza. That's a very salient point.
Great. So, Mr. Kimball, based off of what you learned from research with Mr. Padilla, and based off of what you've heard from the City Council, and assuming that our Green and Sustainability Ad Hoc can meet sooner than later, when do you anticipate that you'll be able to bring back some type of written item for us to deliberate on? You're on mute again.
Thank you. I would shoot for probably the second meeting in June, just because this next meeting, it comes pretty quick with the Memorial Day holiday coming up. And so let's shoot for the first meeting in June.
Okay, so if you've taken note then of our other comments about having pictorial guide, continued outreach,
Yeah.
city staff inspecting these areas, notices on the door, notices on the floor, different options for utensils, then I think that we are well underway for that particular aspect. As far as the mailing out, you mentioned that. When you and I spoke, we also said that we might just have a continuing update in the water bill. Is that still as part of the plan? And if so, can we provide people information on where they can get tested? Because that question does come up quite a bit.
Sure.
Some people don't know where to get tested.
Yes. Again, we are going to put a newsletter in the water bill that goes out in June. I will make sure that we include information on how and where to get tested.
Thank you. And then before we take a vote on that draft letter, I wanted to see if, I know that you said that you're looking into why we have, or could be having potentially higher rates here, or why it's reported as such. Do you think it would be feasible to ask city employees what ideas they have, what suggestions, or what they've seen in other cities? Because I feel that some of our best ideas come from our employees.
Certainly, we can do a survey monkey, for lack of a better word, but we can do a survey of employees and get their feedback. I think that's a good idea.
Great. And then lastly, before I go back to a full round of the council, do you have any feedback on some of the economic development measures that the city of LA or the county are taking, and how we might be able to implement some of those, or create our own program to provide businesses with resources for jobs training, or other services that would be available to them once the stay-at-home orders are lifted?
Yeah, so I think and it might be a good thing to talk about in the context of the CDBG item.
Okay.
The funding item, just because I think that's definitely a really great idea. We just want to make sure, as I mentioned, we don't have any funding to do anything at this point. So maybe CDBG funds for something like that would be a really good use potentially.
Okay, so I'd like to go back around the council one more time. If you have any other questions or comments, along with how you feel with having the council sign on to the letter that is in our packet and to which Councilmember Mendoza alluded. And I will begin first with Councilmember Mendoza, followed by Councilmember Gonzalez.
I'm good with us sending out the letter.
Great. Any other questions or comments, or does that conclude it?
Well, how about the other items in terms, are we going to go back to the parking citations and the sweeping? How are we going to work this in onto this item, this agenda item?
So the one direction that in addition to all those other items, the parking citation reduction program, modified residential street sweeping parking restrictions, the temporary suspension of dial ride and the bus fees and parking meter fees, the late fees for water payment, and waiving fees for food banks and nonprofits that are working with food banks. Those were all sort of initially scheduled to end on May 15th with the end of the last order. Staff at this point is recommending that we continue all of those programs. I just wanted to make sure that we got council direction to continue those in light of the fact that the safer at home order has been extended.
Thank you. And we can make that in one motion with all those combined. Did you have any questions or comments on those remaining items or any other items related to this agenda item, Councilmember Mendoza?
Just how does this compare our stay-at-home, safer at home orders compared to what the county has right now, or what the city of LA is doing? Because it's just a lot of confusions, just to make sure that we're all on the same page.
Right. Well, I believe, if I may, Mr. Mayor, Nick, the city's declaration of local emergency doesn't speak to issues of staying at home or the like. It really is more about the city's ability to respond to emergency conditions. So essentially, the governing document for the city and for all cities in LA County is the county safer at home order. That is right now the definitive guidance on what sorts of activities are to be allowed in the city, and you know, in terms of essential businesses, in terms of public agencies, and how they are to perform their work. The state issues its own guidelines as well, but those tend to be in very broad terms, and they certainly reserve under the counties the right to have more restrictive policies. And the County of LA's policy, by its own terms, is more restrictive than the state level, as it is allowed to be. So I don't know if that answers the question or not, but
Yes, somewhat.
Sorry.
So I don't know how long we can extend this. I'm fine with extending it. I'm just not sure up to what date, you know, is a good time. I don't know if Mr. Kimball has any recommendations on that.
Yeah, I would recommend that we extend it at least through the first meeting in July. We're already most of the way through May, so you know, I think over the next few weeks we're going to see a lot of new businesses allowed to be open. So as businesses open, then we have less of a, you know, a need to have residential parking relaxation, as an example, and probably more need to enforce at parking meters to make sure that cars are moving through and not, you know, staying there all day. So, you know, I think we probably want to, if council were to want to extend it, I would recommend we extend it through the first meeting in July. We'll come back and revisit again at that time to see, you know, where we are as far as opening the economy, or, you know, potentially even taking steps backwards. And at that point, we could revisit to see, you know, if it's appropriate to continue. That would be my recommendation.
And I'm good with Mr. Kimball's recommendation.
Thank you. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you. Excuse me. Yes, actually, part of this that was brought up in Independent Cities Association at our meeting on Thursday. So it was obviously after the posting of this agenda. And what we did talk about is what Councilmember Mendoza alluded to, is all this money that is coming down, but none of it's coming to our local cities. So California League of Cities actually sent out an email to ICA asking for Independent Cities Association to sign on and support. And that would be to send, it's a letter of support that would go to the federal government as well as our legislators here in California to open up that CARES Act funding for all cities, not just the cities that are 500,000 in population or more. Unfortunately, I haven't had time to be able to send it out. I think I was able to send it to Nick. I have no idea if Nick is able to pull it up or not, so everyone can see it. But it's essentially what we've been talking about, and what the letter we've been talking about in sending.
You're unmuting
Yeah.
it.
I do have an email with the letter. I can share it if that's the oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. Let me open it up. I have the Support Local Recovery Coalition form or the Fiscal Impact infographic.
We can go with the Support Local Recovery form. That's just the basic letter that is going to be shown that they're asking all cities to join. I'm assuming, since correct me if I'm wrong, because we found out about this after the fact, and we're already going to approve a letter that's similar, or look at to stand a position, we might be able to approve this. And if not, maybe set it on for the consent calendar for the next meeting.
yeah, is the desire to approve this as a walk-on item? Because if there is a need for immediate action and it came to the attention after the posting of the agenda.
It did come after. I'm not positive if it's needs immediate. I don't know offhand the time frame. So that's why I'm saying it's the same conversation that we're having now. So if we cannot walk this item on, then if maybe we can put it on to consent calendar, because it's the same topic that we're discussing for the next meeting.
And Rich, if I may, can we just get general direction from council?
Yeah.
That staff support, you know, that staff direction from council to have staff support any efforts to, increase local funding, whether it's at federal government level or.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if this is not an action that requires necessarily the blessing of the council, then it should be sufficient to just give you direction to pursue those opportunities. And if this is one of those, to go ahead. I mean, if it's something that requires the blessing of the council, the formal action of the council, then I would recommend perhaps just walking it on tonight, since we're not really sure what the deadline is, but we know that it probably is sooner rather than later. An abundance of caution, but either way.
I'm fine with making the motion of just walking it on, because there are different levels that you can sign on to this. It can be as an organization or an elected if I have approval.
Okay. So although we usually walk on stuff at the beginning of the meeting,
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I guess you can either put a hold on the conversation right now and just, entertain
Well,
motion.
why don't we finish this item and then we'll walk it on?
Okay, very good.
Okay.
Although I feel like this item is written broadly enough because it is a response to COVID, and we've generally held this to be pretty broad, where this could be voted on as part of it. I mean, what is your opinion just based on the subject matter of our agenda heading? You don't think this is broad enough already?
Well, which are we still under 3 or which item?
4.
It's discussion of city's actions regarding coronavirus.
Yeah, that heading is really not even an action heading, unfortunately. It sort of implies that you're going to have a conversation, but not necessarily take action.
Well, we actually have agenda items, action on those already, because we have to extend, we have to approve a letter that was already placed on there, and we have to extend some of the provisions as related to parking and towing.
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, my only humble suggestion would be that it should have, the agenda should have had something worded more clearly stating that this was an action item. If again, though, if there is a time sensitivity to all of these, I don't
We can
think
decide it on. I understand.
Yeah.
Councilmember Ballin, any questions or comments?
I actually have a question now. Sorry. Because he said, maybe I'm a little confused, that the general topic for this is a little too broad and not really an action item, then the other stuff that we have listed there, would those not count as action items for tonight for the extensions?
Well,
So in Rich, so this is my question. So we're asking for council to provide direction. They're not necessarily, there's no need to necessarily approve a resolution or to approve to more give staff direction to submit a letter or provide staff direction to extend. They were implemented sort of, so administratively we would be able to, was how we were looking at it.
yeah, I mean, I think if it's something in the nature of just, getting information out or studying stuff, direction given under this heading would probably be sufficient. The problem is when you're talking about extending policies of the city, like the policy whether or not to enforce parking, you really want to state it more explicitly as, as an action item, as item that you're
So can it not be approved the way that it's written?
Well, Nick, can you run? You said there's an extension of some policies regarding parking enforcement and the like.
Yeah. And I
I
don't
think
mind.
the challenge is there's a lot of stuff under this heading, and it's a little.
Yeah, it's in the staff report. It has the 4. There's 4 like programs that we would just be extending.
Yeah.
Because they were set to expire, but I don't think it's necessarily an issue. We can bring it back on June 1st and have an action item at that point. Just to extend it through the end of June if we need to.
Yeah, I mean,
We can't take action on any of the items that are attached then, correct?
well, if they are in the nature of policy decisions by the city that require council approval, no, I mean, not the
So
way.
I'm asking you, are the ones that are on the agenda, do they fall under that premise though?
Well, the problem is I only have the agenda in front of me. I don't have the full packet.
Oh, okay.
Let me actually see if I can pull up the packet. Yeah, so I mean, look, if there's a need to take immediate action though, well, The problem is it came before the agenda. Let me see if I can call up the entire agenda packet. Hang on just a second here. Okay, this is item 4.
Yes, but the content was accidentally put under item 3. And item 3 content was accidentally placed under item 4.
Oh, okay. Let me see. I'm trying. So if I scroll down to 4, because I have the agenda open now, am I not going to find this item here? Or sorry, I'm looking.
No, it will be under item agenda 3.
Okay, let me just keep.
And we
scrolling.
corrected the content when we approved the agenda.
Let's see where I'm trying. Okay, so item 3. I'm showing
If I
item
may,
3,
page 35.
35. Okay. Discussion of actions regarding coronavirus. On May 20th, the health organization, the following City of Santa Fe Financial Assistance Programs were scheduled to lapse. Parking citation program of, okay, with the expiration of the May 5th health order, the following are intended to lapse. Staff is requesting the City Council allow these programs to be extended. Waiving water fee temporary suspension. Well, yeah, I mean, it would have been preferable to have these listed as action items since they are in the nature of policies for the city. I guess my question to you, Nick, is do you already have authority under the code to take suspension action anyway, independent of the council? Is that something you're allowed to do?
Well, I can look at how it was worded last time.
Right.
Okay, so at this point, we're just not going to vote on it. It doesn't appear that there's clarity as to whether we can.
I
would just
on a
recommend we just
follow-up.
bring it back June 1st and vote on it then.
Okay.
Councilmember Gonzalez?
Okay, yeah, well, if we're fine with bringing it back, then that's fine. But my question was going to be, would we be able to walk it on now because it has expired on the 15th? And now we're already past the due date and needing to continue these policies.
I mean, as a strict matter, the challenge is that it has to be something that came to your attention after the posting of the agenda.
Okay.
So that's going to be a hard.
And Rich, they could,
No problem.
on June 1st, the council could approve that these are extended retroactively, right?
Correct. And frankly, if you do nothing up to January 1st, it's the same as if you extended it anyway. So.
Okay, so council members Mendoza and Gonzalez have spoken. Councilmember Ballin?
Well, I think that individually we could send a letter in support.
Absolutely.
I think that's what we should do, and we should direct the city clerk to prepare a letter from each of us individually. Richard obviously may not be in agreement.
No, I just wanted to say that there seem to be 2 different lines of discussion here. One is whether you can approve the items that are listed on the staff report, which it sounds like you can't. The separate item is this item that I think Robert or Councilman Gonzalez has brought up separately, some special request that probably can legitimately be walked on because it did come to his attention after the posting of the agenda, and it is something that requires immediate action. So I think that the item that you had presented, Councilman Gonzalez, I think that can be walked on if that's the desire of the council tonight.
Okay, Councilmember Ballin, any other questions or comments?
I defer to Councilmember Gonzalez.
Well, let's finish this agenda item, and if you would like to walk that on, we can. Vice Mayor Pacheco, any other comments on agenda item number 4?
Agenda item number 4. Hold on. I thought we were talking about 3. Okay. Well, this is kind of the same thing. No, I don't think I have. I don't think I have any comments to add for this item. Thanks.
Okay, therefore we are closing agenda item number 4. Councilmember Gonzalez, did you want to add the agenda item you discussed as agenda item number 13? Or did you prefer to have it at consent for the next meeting? You're on mute.
I prefer just to walk it on now and get it over with, and then give everybody the option to sign on or fill it out as an individual as well as an organization.
Thank you, Mr. Padilla. If you will guide us through the motion to add this item on as item number 13.
Yes, so there's been a stated need for immediate action. It was also indicated that this item came to the attention of the city after the posting of the agenda. It will require a motion and a second to walk it on, and in order to approve the walk-on, you will need at least 4 affirmative votes to do so. Once it is walked on, you can approve the item by simple majority.
Thank you. Having said that, would you like to make that motion, council member?
Yes, I would like to make the motion to walk on this item.
Thank you. I will second that. Roll call, please, Ms. Fritz.
Yes, Mr. Mayor Joe Fajardo,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hector A. Pacheco,
Yes.
Councilmember Sylvia Balin,
Yes.
Councilmember Robert C. Gonzalez,
Yes.
and Councilmember Mary Mendoza.
Yes.
The motion carries. If you would like to discuss item number 13, Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you so much. Nick, Mr. Kimball, can you please put that back up?
Yeah.
And thank you for the support, council members. So this letter was brought to Independent Cities Association at our last board meeting Thursday night. And they are looking to have cities sign on for support due to the CARES Act that's going out with funding. But none of our cities would actually qualify. None of the smaller cities would qualify. The only 2 individuals that qualify were City of LA and the county. So this is a coalition that was put together by the California League of Cities, and it's going out to all California cities to sign on to try to make it a fair and equitable dealing out of the money according to population. So I know this is also a topic that was brought up in this agenda packet, but this is a formal letter that is being worked on by California cities that they're asking. So my ask would be for the city of San Fernando to sign on as an organization, and it basically you just fill it out. There's nothing else that we would have to do. It does not, we have to put no money in the pot, no nothing. It's just a letter of support, and then give the option to our individuals or even our elected officials that they can send an additional one. That's all.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments, Councilmember Mendoza?
I have none. I support it.
Thank you. Councilmember Ballin?
I move the item.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Pacheco?
No, no comments. Thank you. Support it.
Thank you. I have nothing else to add. I will second this. If we can please go to roll call, Ms. Fritz?
Yes, Mayor Joe Fajardo,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hector A. Pacheco,
Yes.
Councilmember Sylvia Balin,
Yes.
Councilmember Robert C. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Councilmember Mary Mendoza.
Yes. And was there supposed to be a second on that for?
I seconded it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The motion carries. We are now at item number 5, which is the discussion, the continued discussion of additional community development block grant funds. Mr. Kimball?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just so everyone knows, we have Mr. Michael Neal on the line again with us to answer any technical questions. Just real briefly, so based on feedback, again, for the community's sake, we got about $136,000 in CDBG coronavirus funds as part of the CARES Act. This was the one funding source that we did receive through the CARES Act. So we're discussing, we began a discussion last council meeting on how the council wants to use those funds. From that discussion, we could put together sort of 8 categories of potential funding sources based on, the feedback that we heard. The first item is cleaning supplies, disinfectant, and personal protective equipment. We heard that council was interested in that, so that is something that we could, we could use the money for. I don't know that we would need a little bit of money. A relatively small amount of money would go a long way in buying PPE and disinfectant and cleaning supplies, and even getting enough supplies to pass out to the community. So $10,000 to $15,000 may be enough. It may go quite a long way in that area. Then we have youth enrichment programs. There was some discussion about tutoring and working with nonprofits for after school to expand school programs for the youth. We discussed vouchers for residents to purchase food. After some back and forth, I know Mr. Neal went back and forth with the county and got some better answers. It does seem there, although there's a process, there would be eligible to get food vouchers for residents to purchase food. Another use is short-term rental assistance. The council could decide to make direct payments to landlords on behalf of qualifying residents for up to 3 months. So there's that program. And I listed these from 1 to 8 is kind of like the easiest to implement, to the 8 being one of the most either more complicated to implement, or whether it may have been unclear to what extent we could use the funds. So once you get into the short-term rental assistance and small business assistance grant, there's a little bit more of an administrative burden that's required to, on staff, because we would have to vet applicants. We'd have to put together an application process. We'd have to put together some certification process and then send out payments. So there's a little bit more of an administrative burden. Provide testing for residents. We would need to, that has a higher administrative burden just because we'd have to find we'd have to go out and get a service provider with proper qualifications. They have the proper procedures in PPE to administer tests, be able to secure a lab to test samples and then provide results in accordance with HIPAA and ADA and other applicable programs. The senior meals, that wouldn't be hard to administratively implement. I think the caveat there is that we had about 40 seniors or so on a waiting list. All of those seniors have since been included into the program. So we currently don't have anyone on our waiting list for the senior meals. And whenever we are contacted, we do send that out to, we do put them in contact with the county, and they've been really good about adding seniors to that program. And then lastly, which was discussed a little, was a consultant, some sort of consultant to assist businesses. I guess this one really depends on what the focus would be. If the focus is to assist businesses with, providing, filling out the SBA loan applications, doing a number of, doing those sort of, trying to assist them with getting other financing and navigating that whole system. There's actually a nonprofit that works with the city of LA that currently does that kind of work that we could engage, something like that. So I think that one is, relatively clear that CDBG funds are applicable. When it comes to sort of the, coming out with strategies on how to reopen and other sort of kind of more marketing strategies, I think that would take a little more thought. But I'll let Michael, comment on some of those. But those are sort of the 8 categories. I think tonight we're just kind of looking for direction on the top categories the city would like staff to pursue, and maybe a potential appropriation in each one of the categories. One of them could be cat sitting for staff. If they're not in the way. Anyway, so that's what I have. Michael, if you have anything to add, any flavor, and you're here for reference as well.
Okay. I don't have anything further to add. That was a good summary. If anybody has anything, very specific about how they could be implemented, or the reporting requirements, or things of that nature, I would be more than happy to elaborate.
Thank you. Councilmember Mendoza, followed by Gonzalez.
Okay, for item number 1, the cleaning supplies and disinfectant and the PPE, I would say I would like us to maybe invest like 15,000 into PPE so that we can have a nice reserve for the employees, and if anything is needed for our businesses or residents, we can assist them in being compliant with mask or whatever the need might be. I do support 100% the vouchers, food vouchers for residents with a short application, not a lot of questions asked, as long as they are you know, they let us know they are needy. You know, I mean, the specifics on that can be determined, I guess, later, but I'm really very supportive of that. You know, there are a lot of families that have need for meals for their family and their children. Food is costing a lot more, even if, you know, someone hasn't lost their job. We have seniors that are on a fixed income, and food is costing a lot more. So I think this would be helpful for a community um, which is like about 50% low income, considered 50%, Mr. Kimball.
Yeah, I'd have to look, but it's a pretty significant.
It was in the farmer's market when where
Oh,
you
okay.
indicated
Yeah.
in there. It's about 51%, and
Yeah.
about 86% of the children are on the are provided meals with there's the school system. So, you know, there is a need for meals for our families in our city. And the other one that I do support is number 8, the consultant to not the nonprofit consultant possibly, because I do find a need to support our businesses. You know, I right now we don't have the funding to give them any support in terms of assistance with their rent or other real expenses. But I think that if we can, with this method, we can assist many more businesses and help them open safely and hopefully be successful if we're able to guide them in what's needed to open their business in a safe way. So I think, you know, and educating, providing posters, explaining things to them, social media, and how to understand what they're reading or whatever it might be. But those are my 1, 2, 3 top things for me right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you have any additional feedback on that, Mr. Kimball?
No, sorry. I was just looking up some things on the internet. The only question I had, Ms. Mendoza, did you say for PPE item 1, you recommended 15 at
15.
1.5?
Pardon me?
1.5 or 50 at 5.0?
1.5.
Okay, gotcha.
You said 10, right?
Yeah.
I go 15. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you. And if we're gonna go with that 15,000, I agree. We talked earlier, Mayor's the one who brought it up, talked earlier about not even, a lot of our restaurants not obeying. This could be a good opportunity to provide some of that essential PPE to make sure that the restaurants are obeying our the stay-at-home orders. And then also with the food voucher program, that interests me. I think obviously, especially right now, it's needed. It might be a little difficult, but I would like to see this program as a program that we can work or partner possibly with the Chamber of Commerce or the Downtown Mall Association. So these vouchers would stay in the city of San Fernando. So we're passing money to our residents to spend in the city of San Fernando. Otherwise, giving a resident, say, a voucher of $500 and then them going out to the city of LA and spending it to buy food out in the city of LA, that helps them. But if they were able to spend that money here in the city of San Fernando, it's helping them get the food that they need, but it's also helping the city of San Fernando retain our jobs, get our sales revenue. So if we can develop some type of program like that, I think that would be a win-win for everybody.
And Councilmember Gonzalez, do you mind if Michael, can you comment on that and how that would look, having like a local food voucher program?
Sure. With the food voucher program, the qualifying criteria would be low mod clientele, which means that each individual household would qualify. And that could be as simple as a one-page self-certification. How many people are in your household? Do you live in San Fernando? What's your income level? And if you qualify based upon that information, then you would be eligible. Something to keep in mind with all of these programs is we would be reporting on each client. The county actually has a database that's confidential. So each applicant that submitted a self-certification form, they would be entered so that we could show what they received, how we qualified them, and that they were eligible residents of San Fernando. If we wanted to, and it would need to be set up in such a way, and if we wanted to use local businesses, that's totally fine. That's a great idea, but we cannot give like direct money to clients. So if it were like a prepaid card, a food voucher, it would have to be, this is for this person to use only for this specific like food product.
Food product or food store?
Or food store, but it would probably there would be caveats where, like, somebody couldn't buy cigarettes, somebody probably couldn't buy alcohol. It would have to be a set of items.
Okay.
Okay, and then so with that, I mean, like I said, it seems like it could be or could get complicated, but that would not preclude us from creating this food voucher that's like San Fernando dollars, where you can turn into our small businesses.
I don't think so. As long as with anything like this, there's something of a procurement requirement. So if we said this is a local grocery store and these are the items that are eligible and they're at a fair price, as long as we document that, which could be a minimal level of documentation, we should be able to do that.
See, I think we already have our list of businesses that are for our food and our restaurants. We've already been posting them on social media. So I think we already have a simplified database, but I think we should just reach out to all. And if we can utilize these food vouchers to go directly to our businesses here in the city of San Fernando, like I said, I think it's a win-win.
And I understand where Councilmember Gonzalez's heart is coming from, but at the same time, I know a lot of people in San Fernando who work odd hours, who work far away, and sometimes it's easier for them if they work out in Long Beach and they drive there every day to be able to pick up groceries right when they get off of work, as opposed to getting off early, coming here, shifting around their schedule. So I understand where you're coming from, but I think logistically it might make it harder for people. And hopefully the end goal will simply be getting food in people's homes and not too many requirements. But I understand absolutely where you're coming from. And I think that I want to hear what the rest of the council has to say as well.
Well, I wasn't done with my other ones.
Go ahead. Sorry.
And then also, so because there is no more individuals on the waiting list, would it be smart to still put some money into, say, a pot, just in case individuals join the waiting list? Or is it better to not have that because are they getting picked up off the waiting list relatively quickly?
On the senior meals program?
Correct.
No, yeah, they tend to be getting picked up relatively quickly. We also are looking at this program called the Great Plates program, which we're working with the county. So if there are any seniors that for some reason have to wait a week or two to get on the senior meals program, we could also do this Great Plates program to get them food. That is funded through FEMA. So because that's funded through FEMA, we couldn't necessarily use CDBG funds. Personally, my recommendation is just because seniors are able to have multiple ways to get funding. One through the YWCA and our senior meals program, and the other through the Great Plates. I think we have a few really strong avenues to make sure that they're getting the food they need. So if you want to focus it on other items in this list, I mean, again, we can set aside some money for senior meals, but it might go a little further in other areas on this list.
Okay, then I would suggest that we just not provide the money for the senior meals, as it appears that they are taken care of and we do have different funding sources for them. Also for the testing, I think we just continue to work with the county and allow them to do the testing. And then For the consultant, I also agree with Councilmember Mendoza. I think it's really important to help our small businesses. And I think that this could be a great way to make sure that our businesses are strategic on their openings. If there's any language barriers, we already know there's a technological barriers. Not all of our businesses even operate using emails. It's a cash businesses. So the information exchange can be sometimes slower. So if we can actually get somebody to come in and do a strategic analyst and work with our small businesses on how to reopen safely, and then also part of that money that we're talking about with PPE, to be able to help them make sure that our businesses have the PPE, so when they are fully open, that we're already set. Because I guess what they're talking about, not being able to possibly be fully open until July. If we're able to do this, our businesses will be already have the game plan ready to go. So I think that this is a great opportunity, and especially because now post-COVID, the way of business is going to change. The way we do business in the city is going to change. The way that they do business is going to change. And if we have somebody to make sure that we're all on the same page and moving together, which has been a problem in the past, I think this is a prime opportunity for everybody to get on the same page. So I think it would be a great opportunity to get in on this. And that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry that I interrupted you. I wasn't aware that you had additional items. Councilmember Ballin?
I agree with Councilmember Mendoza and Councilmember Gonzalez. However, I think they're lowballing, and we should go with 25,000. It's you're working in the restaurants and in the small businesses. You don't use that mask again and again. You shouldn't. You should use it once, and it has to be disposed of. So and the disinfectants, the cleaning supplies, very critical to the safety of our city. And we already have high numbers of people affected with COVID. So I would go with 25,000. And as far as the food vouchers go, I think it should be the specific supermarkets, Vallarta, Superior, Smart and Final, those supermarkets here in our city. And how easy is that to just get a, what do you call that? A card made up by them, which will restrict what the resident can buy. But one thing that they absolutely need, many of them need, especially the young mothers, are diapers. And that's a concern for me. Those diapers are very, very expensive. And so I'm very concerned about that. I think we can work something out with our local supermarkets. And I think I'm not sure how we would accomplish this, because there's also, we have the 7-Eleven. Some of the mothers have to walk over to 7-Eleven. They don't have transportation. We have some of these other little markets, side markets throughout the city. I'm not sure how it would work out, but we need to give it some thought. 135,000 is not a whole lot of money. Those are my two priorities. So I would support 25,000 for item 1, and actually the balance to go to item number 3. And we haven't set a dollar amount as far as how much would we get the debit card for, but that's something we have to consider depending on where we're at on all of this. That's where I'm at. Thank you.
And Councilmember, the 100% cotton masks can be reused because you can clean them in the washer. So those are
Okay,
reusable.
how much are those?
I have no idea. I got some as a gift when the outbreak started for my mom, and I have not checked on the cost. But
Right.
but in any event,
But you're saying they can be washed?
The
there's,
ones that are 100% cotton.
that sounds really good, but I'm not sure that some people, well, anyway, that's an individual decision. You never know what people are
No, I
gonna do.
understand what the completion of the thought was, that not everyone will be considerate, individually wash it before reusing it. I understand.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm gonna
Uh,
step away, but I can still hear you guys.
Thank you. And Council Member Pacheco?
Yes, thank you. I really like number one. I echo what has been said already. In fact, I even think Councilwoman Ballin might be lowballing it. I think we should maybe do more. Nick, let me ask you something. Would
Yeah.
it be interesting or feasible, or both, to maybe assemble, I think we have what, 3,000 households in San Fernando, something like that. Like a little care package that has like a couple pairs of gloves, some hand sanitizer, and a couple masks. And, if you have a water bill, you can come collect it. And, it doesn't have to be a huge bonanza, but, if there's like a bottle of sanitizer, a bottle of wipes,
Yeah.
and some gloves and masks, I think that could be something that we could offer residents.
Yeah. I believe we have close to the 6,000 units, Tim.
6,000?
Yeah. So Tim, shake yes or no.
In terms of housing units,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
more, just a shade over.
The 6,000. Yeah. So that being said, I like. So one of the things we were thinking about doing, Vice Mayor, was trying to have a care package for some census branded items, and this might be a good way to kind of leverage some funding where maybe we have a couple of hand sanitizers that are census branded, and face masks that are City of San Fernando branded. We might be able to do that and get a care package out to everyone with PPE. And Michael, since you're on the phone, you think providing community with PPE is with masks, gloves, and some hand sanitizer, like a care package like that? You think that's an expenditure that is kind of acceptable?
I think it would be eligible. I think administratively, the most challenging part would be, and I checked directly with the county on this, is that this could be available for residents and businesses, but we have to document serving individuals.
Mhm.
So it probably couldn't be as simple as, hey, we're going to send one to every doorstep in the city. We would have to document who it was going to and report on it. And that could be as simple, again, as a one-page intake form, but we would have to document how many units to what individuals.
Gotcha. So that's a consideration on something.
Yeah, I mean, I would like us to consider having some sort of something that somebody can come pick up, and it has, gloves and masks and some hand sanitizer in it. At the very least, I think if they're giving us money to spend on the coronavirus, we should turn around and give it to, our residents in the form of cleaning supplies and so forth.
Yeah.
Secondly, could I ask the gentleman on the phone, did I read that broadband infrastructure could be eligible for any of these CDBG funds?
It can be.
Okay.
It can be, and the reason for that is just like in keeping with the social distancing, safer at home. That is one thing that could be done to help people, get through this better with that
I would
kind of.
Nick, you may not know off the top of your head, or maybe you do, but I would love for us to kind of explore what City Hall and our other buildings do in terms of Wi-Fi, and maybe we can up the speed at the very least, because everyone's doing Zoom calls. Maybe we can make the public Wi-Fi offering wider and bigger. I know this isn't underneath the specific points of this, but if we're not making a solid decision today, that would be something that I'm sorry that I didn't come up with it before, but I was only recently till I kind of got into the details about whether we could increase our broadband because everybody uses the internet, and with more people working from home, more people on Zoom meetings, the bandwidth is very, you know how slow it can get at City Hall. So maybe we can upgrade, you know what I mean? Put a T1 in there, one of those suckers flies. So that's something that's been on my mind. Does our Nixle capability, is it Nixle or Pixel? It's Nixle, right?
Pixel, yeah.
Nixle. Are there any more capabilities that we can explore with Nixle? Is it pretty much we got what we pay for already? Are there any other offerings that they have in terms of, direct messaging to people that sign up for it, or maybe an information campaign? I thought that was an interesting thing that we had for alerts and so forth.
Yeah. So so one of the things, and I spoke with the mayor about it at the end of last week. We do have, so Everbridge is sort of the parent company of Nixle. And Everbridge is the Alert San Fernando system that we got up, which can give messages, that can push out messages to every landline and cell line in San Fernando. So that's one of the things that we started. We want to roll it out with like an initial message and get people to kind of sign up, even though they don't need to necessarily actively sign up. We do want to kind of push that out, but that is one way that we're going to start utilizing. We got that implemented really quickly, but we want to start utilizing to push out information.
Okay.
Could I jump in?
Go ahead, please.
Where the internet broadband upgrades are mainly made an eligible CDBG CARES activity, this was actually presented by the county as something that could be added on to cities that have housing rehabilitation programs, the type of programs where seniors or low to moderate income people can get assistance with rehabbing their homes. I do not see that as a standalone item. It was, as I said, mainly offered as something that we could enhance that type of program with. So in the case that was implemented, it probably would be in conjunction with a housing rehabilitation type program. So that's not a very easy one the way I see it right now.
Okay. And then under youth enrichment, would something like, I don't know, maybe this is too esoteric, waiving registration fees for day camp, something like that? Would that be something that, or is that something that's going to have to come out of like general fund type spending?
I don't believe, like, we're going to be canceling our day camp program for the summer because it's just not going to be allowed for the Safer at Home. That's kind of what the guidance we've gotten, and I think most cities are going to be. So
okay.
I don't know if that makes that moot or not, but
all right.
I think that'd be
fair enough. Fair enough. Well, okay. Well, in that case, I feel like if we can assemble some sort of box for 6,000 homes, maybe that costs 25,000, maybe it costs 36,000. I don't know, but that would be my opinion to spend, and to do some sort of split between the youth enrichment programs and the vouchers for the rest of the food. I think those are really good goals to have. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks. I think that those are all good ideas, but I think that given that there are so many good ideas, the goal needs to be to try to limit it to what we believe are the priorities. Mr. Kimball, in the event that we did do 25,000 for item number 1, and then for item number 3, the remaining 116,000 was exclusively used at San Fernando grocery stores versus if someone has to go in Sylmar or close to their work, how much extra tax revenue would that bring in for the city?
That would be a little difficult because not most food isn't sales tax. There's no sales tax applied to it. But anything that there was sales tax, if they bought anything that there's sales tax did apply to, that would bring in some revenue. I think one of the big things is that you're supporting local business, local jobs, that type of thing.
I know, but in terms of the specific question as to what would you, if you don't know the exact tax revenue, what would you guesstimate it is?
Maybe 0.5%. So, if 1% is $1,000, but maybe I mean, not a huge amount. You're probably looking at $500 or so.
So we
'Cause
might, okay, so if all of that 116,000 we're using San Fernando, we might get about $500 back, give or take.
Yeah, probably, yeah, through sales tax.
I have no problem if people are able to conveniently purchase here. My goal is to make sure that people have food in their homes, whether they have to go somewhere that is close to work. One reason that it might be fees are better to have it limited to San Fernando stores is so that we can at least a little more easily regulate it. If that's the main reason for doing it, then I can agree with that. But if there's no benefit in terms of regulation, I would hope that people can use whichever stores they like. Councilmember Ballin made a good point that some people like to shop at 7-Eleven. And I'll give you an example. For whatever reason, 7-Elevens tend to have the best quality bananas you will find everywhere. Even when I go to local stores here to shop for my groceries, I tend to get the bananas at 7-Eleven because they are so fresh and delicious there versus to what I feel are slightly more I would say not as well kept as the 7-Elevens, which are delivered every day. And so I want to make sure that we're equitable to all the stores. There's also a bunch of stores that I know residents go to that I haven't been to, but you know, Izzy's Meat Market, for example, that's been here, I think, for decades on McClay. So there has to be a way that
Siggy's.
if we want this to benefit San Fernando businesses, that we try to be equitable at the same time that we're trying to be efficient. And I'm not really sure what that balance is. I don't agree with having this as a Chamber of Commerce program. I think that if we do have any kind of outside consultants or outside help, it needs to be from an impartial and an independent group as to one that has been, I feel, more politically charged. I want this to be a program where I feel that every business feels that they can equally cooperate with, that they can equally participate in. And I would just rather have an organization that's been more, that has a streak of independence on this matter, if for whatever reason we can't handle it ourselves. So in summation, I think that all items you provided, 1 through 8, are really applicable. But if we're going to limit it to number 1 and to number 3, I don't think that there is any disagreement that some of the basic necessities we have are making sure that we have disinfectants and PPE, along with low-income families having enough food in their homes. And, you know, this COVID-19 crisis is really going to have a huge economic impact on people. And I want to make sure that at the very least, we are able to assist some of those people with the basic staples in life that they need. And so with regards to number 1, if there is some way to incorporate that with the program that I mentioned earlier, which is reaching out to the businesses in terms of making sure that they are in compliance with safety laws and health laws, I think that would be helpful. Or even what Mr. Gonzalez stated earlier in the meeting, even if we're providing them with, you know, an initial set of prepackaged utensils, you know, I would be open to something like that if it really does help with cleanliness at restaurants. But having said that, you've had the chance to not speak to, but listen to the 5 council members. Before I go back to see if there's any other questions or comments, what type of direction would you like in order to be able to move forward on this?
So it sounds like the majority of council definitely supports 1 and definitely supports number 3. A minority also sort of look at seem to support number 8, but it looks like the focus is 1 and 3. So, you know, what we could do, we have to come back, and again, Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe we still do have to come back with an actual legislative action on to appropriate funds. So there will be another sort of bite at the apple. I would kind of suggest, especially if we're looking at the PPE and maybe incorporating, you know, providing to businesses and making that more of an information campaign with the PPE. Maybe we look at just to make it, you know, even 36,000 for PPE and 100,000 for vouchers for residents, if that seems like a good mix. But again, I think that's kind of what I heard in
So would it be helpful to have a motion limiting this to items number 1 and 3 and for you to bring back a potential breakdown along with the plan?
if that's the desire of council, that would make it the next meeting more focused.
I will make that motion to limit this to item number 1 and 3 as discussed, and for Mr. Kimball to come back with a plan to implement those items. Is there a second?
Second.
A roll call, please, Ms. Fritz?
Yes. Mayor Joe Fajardo,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hector A. Pacheco,
Yes.
Councilmember Sylvia Ballin,
Yes.
Councilmember Robert C. Gonzalez,
No, I think we should also include number 8.
Councilmember Mary Mendoza.
No.
Very well, the motion carries. Having said that, Mr. Kimball, I think that you have satisfactory direction at this point, and we will revisit this at our next meeting.
I have a question.
You may.
Nick, I like the idea of packaging it with the census. When you come back on the 8th, will you bring back information how we could tie it and package it together?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
That's really smart. I like that. Councilmember Mendoza?
In terms of the food vouchers, I do like Councilmember Gonzalez's idea. Not necessarily, I'm not for going with the Mall Association or the Chamber, but oh God, what I lost my track. In the vouchers, maybe we could get a different variety of vouchers or cards, whatever method that's permitted, that allows them to shop at the various restaurants if they're interested. I do want to keep it local. I am very interested in keeping it local to our local supermarkets, Smart and Final, El Super, Vallarta, and some of the local small businesses as well. So that's kind of my take on it. Just maybe you have $10 vouchers. If they can select, if we say a certain amount of money, we're saying we're going to give you each $50. You can get $10 from a 7-Eleven or one of the local restaurants, and then $20 for the supermarket or something. So just as an idea to put that out. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll have to come back with, I'll work with Michael Neal with that to develop a program that's sort of compliant with CDBG and how that sort of looks. So we'll bring that back.
Any other comments on this item?
Yeah, I would just like to also echo, I think it's really important that we try to incorporate our small businesses. Like I said, Ziggy's Meat Market's been there forever. There's lines all the time for every holiday.
I think
to
it's
be able to
30 years or something, maybe even 40 years.
Yes, they've been there forever. But also look at, like, say, for instance, Carrillo's, they've been there forever. But then you also have to look at our small businesses that just opened, like the Peruvian restaurant who opened, I think it was the week that COVID happened. Really bad luck. But we cannot leave these individuals out and only give our money to these big corporate businesses that are in town. So please, I would just definitely try to look at our local small businesses as well.
All right, then. Having said that, we are going to move on to the agenda. I will be leaving in a little bit. What I believe is going to be a relatively quick item, so I will go to that one next, is item number 9, and then we will end at item number 8 before I leave, and then the council can continue with the regular order. Item number 9 is consideration to adopt an ordinance amending section 2-1212 and section 2-161 of the San Fernando City Municipal Code to permit the appointment of a city clerk by the city manager. Mr. Kimball, if you wanted to direct us on this.
Sure. Yes. And so the proposed ordinance is really just to kind of bring San Fernando in line in this, to further the city manager form of government, in line with many of the other city manager form of governments. whereby the city clerk is a department head that's hired by the city manager. The city council did a great job and picked an amazing city clerk, Julia, who just started with us. And this obviously wouldn't impact her employment at all, other than just change her reporting structure. So, the city clerk is has been hired by city council. This would just be sort of finalized, sort of furthering that city manager form of government and placing Ms. Fritz, officially designating her as a department head in our department head resolution, and having the reporting through this.
Thank you. Councilmember Ballin served on the ad hoc committee for the selection of the city clerk. Although this is slightly different, it's very much related. So I would like to start with her first.
I support, especially in this unique situation. Julia hasn't even seen most of the council members since she's been on board. It's how does she report directly to us? It's just a very challenging time, and I already know that Julia and Nick have established a very professional working relationship. I really appreciate it, and this is something they both asked for, and I support it 100%.
Thank you. Councilmember Mendoza, followed by Gonzalez.
I have no questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Gonzalez.
I agree. As a matter of fact, this is my first time that I actually got to see her. So this is perfect. Yeah. Thank you.
And Vice Mayor.
It's fine with me. I hope you two get along, and let us know if anything changes.
I'm sure that they'll get along really spiffily, and so I have no concerns about that. I think that the existing form that we have, where the clerk reports to the council, was beneficial given the previous dynamics of past city managers. I think that having a bit more stability at City Hall in Mr. Kimball's stewardship has changed the dynamics on this, and I am happy to support this as well. Having said that, I will move to approve item number 9 as stated in the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Gonzalez. Roll call, please, Ms. Fritz.
Yes. Mayor Joe Fajardo,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hector A. Pacheco,
Yes.
Councilmember Sylvia Ballin,
Absolutely, yes.
Councilmember Robert C. Gonzalez,
Yes.
and Councilmember Mary Mendoza.
Yes.
The motion carries. Having said that, we are now moving on to item number 8, which is a consideration to adopt an urgency ordinance amending section 26-91A of the San Fernando City Code to permit the appointment of any member of the council as chair and vice chair of the disaster council. And Mr. Kimball, if you would like to start us on this.
Sure. Just before I start, Michael Neal, thank you very much for joining us for the CDBG item. You can drop off if you'd like.
You're welcome. Have a good evening.
All right. Well, I'll be in touch shortly. Okay. So this item, per direction from City Council at our last regular meeting, was to initially the Disaster Council had a very strict reading of who could serve on the council, and it was basically the mayor and one council member. However, council directed staff to make some urgency changes to that so that we can reconstitute the Disaster Council immediately start meeting and just basically, instead of having the requirement for the mayor and a council member, just having it be any 2 council members that may be interested in serving. So the item before you tonight is an urgency ordinance, and the reason it's structured as an urgency ordinance is so that we could move forward, assuming it's approved, we can move forward with reconstituting the Disaster Council quickly. Otherwise, if it's a regular ordinance, you'd have the first reading tonight, the second reading at our next meeting on January 1st, and then 30 days later it would become effective, and it would be July 1st before sort of the new makeup of the committee of the Disaster Council was effective. So that's why it's being presented as an urgency ordinance tonight. especially because obviously in this pandemic sort of time is of the essence. So again, the city attorney's office assisted in preparation of this ordinance. So we are both here for any questions.
Thank you. And as I mentioned at the previous meeting, I had previously brought this up, and I had spoken to Councilmember Mendoza about this. After giving this a lot of thought and given all the work that I have put in so far into our response, and I'm still intending to invest, if it is the desire of the council, I would like to continue staying on this committee at least through the end of my term. And so I hope that the council will consider that. But having said that, I definitely want to go and receive council feedback and input, beginning first with Councilmember Mendoza.
I support the change in the ordinance to allow any two council members to participate on this. And also, I think that I wanted to add that there's one thing that we didn't include in this, and I don't know if council wants to consider this, is that this council pays $50 for the participants in this committee. And I don't know if it's $50 or more. Mr. Kimball may know the exact amount, but and I guess it indicates that everyone on the committee gets paid, when in reality, most of the people participating should not be paid, because council members shouldn't really be paid for this.
I
And
agree.
some other officials from other agencies that support the committee maybe should not be paid. So maybe Mr. Kimball can explain a little more on that.
Yeah, so I believe actually it's $75 now. I think it was part of the resolution where it was an increase to commissions and councils. But that is correct. Really, most of about half of the positions on this council, a little more than half, are city staff or council members. I don't believe council members, because of the government code, are eligible for an additional stipend above their salary. Staff members would not be eligible for the stipend served on the committee. And then for the other agencies, LAUSD, the fire department, American Red Cross, and some of the volunteer organizations. The volunteer organization probably, that member probably would be eligible for it, but the other ones that work for government agencies, it's really, I think, part of their own home agencies policy whether or not they can accept a stipend, but oftentimes they can't if they're staff members. So it could potentially be applicable to one or two members that may be volunteers that aren't necessarily staff of another government agency. So it would be up to council, I guess, whether or not we just completely eliminate it and have it be more of a volunteer organization. I do know, I would kind of lend that the type of person that serves on a disaster council is typically the type of person that is really serious about disasters and probably would serve regardless of whether or not there was compensation. So that might be a consideration as well.
Okay.
That's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Ballin?
When I sat on the disaster council for several years, Nick is correct. We had a lot of various agencies that were represented on the disaster council, but the three that I can think of that would possibly have probably did not want the stipend is that the rescue dogs representative, the ham operator, and Holy Cross. And I don't think my entire time on the disaster council, not one person ever asked about a stipend. So I'm going to ask that we just not include it at this time. These are people very, very committed to the safety of the residents. And I really appreciate that. And I am asking for support. I think it is important that future, this is not calling out the mayor or anyone, but future, we have to make sure we have two council members present at the disaster council. So those are my comments. So I'm not targeting anyone by asking that this be changed, but it is critical that we keep it intact. And that was one of the problems as to why, yeah, it's not intact today.
Thank you. Councilmember Gonzalez.
Thank you. I also agree. This is this is a really important committee, and I also agree with Councilmember Balin. A lot of the individuals that are involved in emergency operations love to be involved in emergency operations, and there's so much training that goes into it. And as our city manager stated, majority of the people that are listed actually on here won't even qualify to receive a stipend. So I think we just leave it the way it is. I also think that it's necessary to make the change to 2 council members, any council members, regardless of mayor or not. I think that's extremely important. And I just want to make sure that individuals know that I'm extremely interested in this. As I'm just going to read off, because I am in emergency operations as well, some of my credentials. I have incident command systems 100, 200, 300, 400, 700, and 800. I have emergency operations center 101, 201, 301, web emergency operations center 8.0, essential emergency concepts into earthquakes, essential emergency operations center action planning, which would be perfect for this. Incident command center and emergency operations center interfaces. I've been in activations from level 1, 2, and 3. I've also worked fires. I've worked the floods. I've even worked marathons. So, and I think that is one thing that gets overlooked, because you can open your activation level at a low activation, like a level 3, and have it ready, set, and prepared for if you ever do have to kick it into a 1 or a 2, if there isn't ever an event. For example, the LA Marathon, the EOC is always on at a level 3. And then they're prepared to bump up to a 2 or a 1 if needed. This is something that we have to take into consideration now when we're dealing with our Open Streets campaign. And then also COVID. I've worked the COVID event. Currently right now in my district, I oversee 3 emergency shelters for COVID, homeless shelters. I am extremely versed in emergencies. I've worked them for years now, and I think it would be extremely beneficial if I am on this council. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Thanks. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. I think that was very, very nice to know. I didn't know not a lot of that about you. Quick question. I'm a little confused, Mr. Padilla or Mr. Kimball. Are there terms to the members of this disaster council? It says 2 years here, but I'm not sure if the council members are actually excluded from that term limit or not. I'm looking at section 2B of the resolution.
I don't remember any
You're
term
on
limit.
mute, you're on mute, Rich.
I'm
Go ahead.
looking at the existing code under 226-91B, which is not changed by the edits proposed for tonight. It says the disaster council shall be composed of 9 members, each with full participation and voting rights, except for those members included in pursuant to subsections A1 through A4, which is inclusive of the council members. The terms of office of members of the disaster council shall be for a period of 2 years. So by its terms, it appears that the council members are not subject to any sort of term limit. They would appear to serve at the pleasure of the council.
Okay. I would like to float the idea among the council that maybe we should just put a 2-year term limit so that all the qualified council members that wish to serve could serve. Alternatively, is there any specific reason why only 2 council members are allowed? I mean, is there anything stopping us from putting 3 or more?
More likely than not, it's in order to avoid the meetings becoming essentially council meetings, because if you have 3 council members together,
Right, okay.
you've got a council meeting. So.
Right. Okay, that makes sense, of course. Okay, and then and I just want to address this one idea behind the stipend. I really think we need to pay people when we're asking them to serve us. I know these people are dedicated to their job. I know that they love community service, but to not pay them when we can and when other cities do, it's just not right. Like, even if we're covering someone's gas, if we're covering their lunch that day, I think it's the least we can do for people that are, you know, sacrificing their time and their energy to help us out. I would very much encourage us to have a stipend for whoever is eligible. I don't know out of how many of these nines, how many we ended up deciding were eligible or not. But I really think that we need to pay people. Maybe it may seem that someone it might be wealthy or doesn't need the money, but you might be surprised. I think a lot of people will find $75 or $100 very nice and very useful and very much an incentive to go to the meeting and to attend with the right frame of mind, so to speak. So I'm very much in favor of establishing a stipend and paying whoever it is that we need to pay. That being said, I did have another question, and this is either for the mayor or for Nick. Are we voting on the members of this council after this resolution passes, or is that for another meeting?
You know, it looks like it should have been agendized as a separate item for the appointment, because what the one action is to change the structure of the policy, but in order to actually effectuate the policy with an appointment, it looks like it should be agendized.
Yeah, see, that was my concern. I really think we should try to do it today. Is there any way we can affect the council if this passes? Because waiting another 2 weeks, I mean, we're like 3 months now beyond the outbreak. What do you get? What do you think, Mr. Padilla? Is there anything that we can do to do so?
Yeah, you know,
of course, this is if the council
Yeah.
agrees. Perhaps the council wants to
Yeah.
wait another meeting. I don't know, but this is just my question to you. It's able, if we're able to.
Yeah, I'm trying to see if there's some way we can finesse this. Maybe if other council members want to ask questions at the moment.
Well, I'm thinking in light of COVID, and we have to hurry up and get this up and running.
Yeah.
It doesn't even make sense to me that we would not vote for 2 representatives to kick it off effective tomorrow.
Right.
That makes sense to me too. I mean,
yeah. I think the
it's
challenge
almost inherent, you know. It's almost like.
Yeah. Well, you know, I don't want to frustrate the intent of the council here. You know, it certainly would have been preferable had that been agendized that way, to allow the action tonight. I appreciate that. I think the challenge is that, you know, strictly speaking, that's a separate action. You know, and unless, I mean, I don't know how you get around that, strictly speaking. Yeah.
All right. Fair enough. Let me check my last one here. I think I think that'll be it for me. If we do vote, if we don't vote, I don't know. I thought Mr. Gonzalez's resume is very compelling, and I would support him. And I think if the mayor, as mayor, wants to do it, I would support him too. But I'll just leave it at that. I don't leave the rest open for the council to deliberate.
Thank you. I appreciate the support. I do agree with deleting the stipends, as Councilmember Mendoza brought up. I think that it's already understood that these are our duties, the ones who choose to serve on it. Although I know that when I spoke with SEIU, they had been interested in having a labor representative. I didn't see that as added to this agenda item. Is it just overlooked, or it was never really vetted, or it's or you disagree with that policy change?
Personally, I don't think it's a terrible policy change if the council wants to go with that as a policy change. It just wasn't, it's not you know, the direction, just the direction received at the last council was just to change it, but the last meeting was just to add the two, to change the mayor to just an at-large council member. However, if there is a desire to increase or add labor, one or two labor positions, I don't think that's a terrible, I mean, that could be a good idea.
Okay, I would recommend then that unless people feel passionately about not changing the makeup right now, I would recommend adding one labor representative. I would recommend deleting the stipend. And I would recommend that we have a 5-minute meeting tomorrow where we have two consent items, basically naming the two representatives to serve on this and having the motion to pass item number 4 all as consent sometime at tomorrow if possible.
We couldn't do it tomorrow because we would need 24 hours to post.
Yeah, that meeting would have to happen before the end of this meeting.
Oh, I meant 8. Oh, I see. I was thinking 8:30. If we posted it now somehow. So, but in any event, having a special meeting aside for 5 minutes tomorrow, my recommendation again is to delete the pay or the stipend and to include a labor representative.
And, you know, one thing I'd like to recommend, and this is meeting Mr. Pacheco a little bit halfway. These meetings usually take are at lunchtime. So providing lunch quarterly, I think what might be something very nice for us to do, because this is lunchtime for our staff member as well as the council members. So I recommend that we include lunch for the meetings, not the stipend, but lunch.
Do these meetings occur quarterly? Is that,
Yes. Yes.
Oh, wow. I thought they were more often than that.
Is that only for meetings, I assume, where people are physically present versus virtual meetings, or is it for all meetings?
No, when they're physically present, when that opportunity presents itself.
And I think it's at least quarterly. I mean, in a time like
Oh,
now,
okay,
we
yeah.
have to drop.
It shall meet at least quarterly upon upon the call of a chairman.
Yeah.
Right.
So in times like these, we
Yeah,
probably,
quarterly is like an eternity.
So we'll definitely take that under advisement. I'm not sure if that needs to be part of the formal city ordinance, but as long as it's noted for the record that the desire is to be able to provide people with lunch, I think that's helpful. Are you okay with that, Councilmember Ballin? Or do you want it as part of the formal ordinance?
No, I think I made my feelings known about that, and so
Okay.
has Mr. Pacheco. So I'm good.
So for the first part of this, it can only be a strict vote on the ordinance before us, plus any changes. It does require a 4/5 vote.
I have a question.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Sorry, I raised my hand. I'm sorry, I don't know if you saw it.
Oh, I didn't see that. I apologize.
I agree too with the lunch. That's fine. But also, my question would be, if we're going to include one labor spot, right? Then what? Because there's different bargaining groups. So what would that one labor spot be?
so if we want to include labor, I would actually recommend 2 labor spots because there are 9 representatives. And if we just include 1, then you have 10 people, which then presents a potential for a tie, a 5-5 tie, if you will.
Yeah, but you don't want to just give them an extra vote. I mean, slow down a little bit here.
Or if we have 1 labor, I mean, we would need to, or we could put labor into, you know, we could look at like if you look at number 9, is a representative from California Emergency Patrol or other similar trained. It's kind of nebulous. We could switch that out for a.
I have an idea.
Okay.
Because there are different branches in emergency operation, and typically one or the other falls into one, I don't see it as a bad idea to include one spot for like the law coordinator, or one spot for, say, the logistics coordinator or the public works. Well, typically public works is logistics, but it can, you know, shake out to different things. And then that could be the dedicated spot, because I don't see I think it could be a good opportunity for whoever the coordinator position is to be in these meetings too, because this disaster service council is going to be helping to formulate everything that's going to go down to the coordinators. So if the coordinators have the opportunity to sit in this meeting, I think it could be good.
Yeah.
And then that would give them the opportunity to have some individuals from labor without having to designate a labor spot.
So the coordinator for emergency services is one of the spots.
Mhm.
There's an assistant director, there's the coordinator for emergency services, who right now that person's in the police department.
Correct.
So I mean, you kind of have police there. Yeah, so I mean, so we'd either have to switch one out or add two.
I don't think that there's a big travesty to having a committee that has an even number like this. I just can't imagine that it's going to be a really vitriolic 5-5 vote. But
Right.
if you don't want to add the position now because you want to give it some more thought, I don't have any qualms with holding off on making that revision.
Okay.
Councilor Mendoza?
Just for me, for clarification for myself, are you, Councilmember Gonzalez, are you referring to a particular city position in Public Works? Is that what that is?
So typically what happens in emergency operations, so when you go into an emergency, they have our emergency center, operations center, and that's broken down into different branches. There's, for example, the planning division, there's a logistics division, there's a law division, there's many different divisions. And typically a public works individual can sit in the logistics section. So you would have that because they're more in charge of the shipping out of equipment, ordering in equipment, that type of stuff, where obviously the law is, and especially in our city, typically the law would run our EOC because we do not have the fire department that sits in our city.
Mhm.
So it's not always, and typically those spots, it's not the head of public works or it's not the police chief. It's whoever has the most training. For example, like myself, I'm only a park maintenance supervisor, but when it comes to emergency operations, I send down everything from logistics throughout rec and parks, regardless if it's the superintendent or general manager, I send them the memos.
Would it be advisable for us to recommend a particular position in Public Works? I think it's a good idea to have two Public Works employees on this committee. I don't know, because I don't know all the workings, but
What if we
particular
just,
designated position and an at-large from Public Works?
what about if we just approve it as is, and then we have this discussion with our committee and then come up with something and then bring it back to approve at a later date?
That's fine too. We can approve this as is with the deletion of the stipend. So I will go ahead and move to approve item number 8 with the deletion of the stipend for all members. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ballin. Roll call, please.
Yes, Mayor Joe Fajardo,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hector A. Pacheco,
No.
Councilmember Sylvia Ballin,
Yes.
Councilmember Robert C. Gonzalez,
Yes.
and Councilmember Mary Mendoza.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion carries. And before we leave this item, there will at some point have to be a meeting, whether it's our next regularly scheduled meeting or a meeting with just consent items. That's 5 minutes. Are there any objections to both me and Councilmember Gonzalez serving on this committee?
Yeah,
Let me
yeah,
ask
one
a
second.
question.
I think
me-
everyone that wants to should be
Yeah,
able to.
Richard,
Well,
do you have,
yeah, because I don't
that sounds
think
like a
that-
vote.
right. Yeah, unfortunately, that's unfortunately not anything that can be considered tonight because we.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Okay.
it wasn't agendized, and I sincerely apologize for that. it should have been there, but it isn't. But if we can have a follow-up meeting as soon as reasonably possible, then this kind of discussion can be had about who will be on it.
And so I'll split the blame with Rich 50-50. It was, you know, we both dropped the ball on that one. What I would suggest is we have a quick, maybe later this week on Thursday, if we have a quick special meeting that's just this item and that's it. And it just, all we're doing is any council members that want to submit information in support of their nomination, we could do that as well. And then we can just have this item later this week.
I just want to say something, considering the way we're working, which is a very challenging way to work, these things are going to happen. So there's no blame anywhere. It's just going to happen. And it's very frustrating, actually, not to pop in and out of City Hall. It's so difficult and challenging, and it's hard not going directly to Richard on Thursdays, to you, Nick, throughout the week, and Julia. We haven't even had an opportunity to establish a good working relationship. So I just want to say there's no blame here, none.
I appreciate the sentiment, but I'll still take blame.
No.
All right, having said that, I suppose we will have to reconvene to discuss any further, I guess, changes to this committee or additions. And I will be leaving at this point. Oh, Councilmember Mendoza?
Just if we are going to meet again, because I know it puts a lot of pressure on Mr. Kimball to develop the next agenda for a special meeting, that we be considerate of him and staff in implementing the next meeting, which allows them enough time to prepare for it. Just that we keep that in mind.
And just stick to the item we agreed to tonight. Don't add a lot.
Appreciate it. If it's just this one item, I think we can accommodate that pretty well. That would be
also consent for number 4, where we had consensus, but we couldn't vote on. So having said that, the meeting will continue back at item number 6. This is a consideration to approve a cooperative integration agreement with LA County Development Authority to continue participation in the Los Angeles Urban County Community Development Block Grant Program. I will be leaving at this point, but
Mr. Mayor, what other agenda items are left? Is it 10 through 12 after that?
it is 6. It is 6, 7, and 10 through 12.
6, 7, 10 through 12. Okay.
All right, thank you all. I appreciate your time and take care.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Okay, the mayor has left at 8:32 p.m. Nick, I believe the next agenda report's from you, right?
Yes. I'll
Okay,
give
please.
a really quick. There a few of these should go really quickly, actually. So number 6 is one of them. We participate. We talked earlier about CDBG. There are a lot of federal requirements related to having a CDBG program. So we participate as a smaller city through the LA County's it's called an Urban County CDBG program. And there are, I believe, 20 other cities plus other cities that participate in that. We have participated in that program for many, many years. And this is just an approval. They recently changed their name they rebranded from the Community Development Commission or something like that to the LACDA. So we need to adopt a new agreement with their new legal title. So really, this is just a recommendation that we continue to participate in the CDBG program through the county and approve the new MOU with the revised legal name.
Okay, great. Any questions from the council? Mr. Gonzalez? No? Ms. Mendoza?
No questions or comments?
Ms. Ballin?
I move the item.
Great, and
I'll second.
Okay, great. Is this a roll call item, Ms. Fritz?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, please.
Mayor Fajardo is absent. Vice Mayor Hector A. Pacheco
Yes.
and Councilmember Sylvia Ballin.
Yes.
Councilmember Robert C. Gonzalez,
Yes.
and Councilmember Mary Mendoza.
Yes.
Excellent. The motion passes. Moving to item number 7. This, I believe, is from Mr. Kimball and Mr. Kenneth Jones.
Yes, real quick. This is an administrative item to increase. We currently contract with EnvironGen Technologies to service our ion exchange, commonly known as our nitrate removal system. So we had some additional expenditures this year due to some damage that needed to be fixed and some additional stock purchases. So we need to increase that contract above the administrative authority to do it. So this is just a request to increase that purchase order due to change orders. Just one of the things I'd like to mention, EnvironGen was providing salt for our IX system early on in the contract, and they weren't the most cost effective. So that's when we switched from having EnvironGen provide the salt to buying the salt from a third-party provider. And that's part of the cost is because we weren't expecting to originally buy salt from EnvironGen. We had to for a bit until we got a new provider. But that is the primary driver for the request tonight. This is a one-time request, so next year the appropriate amount will be included in the budget.
Excellent. Any questions from the council, Mr. Gonzalez,
I have none, and I'll move the item.
Ms. Mendoza,
No comments or questions?
Ms. Ballin?
I move the item.
Okay, and I have no comments or questions either. Seems very much mundane. I think Mr. Gonzalez moved it first, and Ms.
Oh,
Ballin, if you
sec-
want a second, great.
Yes.
Okay, please, Ms. Fritz.
Yes, Mayor Joe Fajardo is absent. Vice Mayor Hector A. Pacheco,
Yes.
Councilmember Sylvia Ballin,
Yes.
Councilmember Robert C. Gonzalez,
Yes.
and Councilmember Mary Mendoza.
Yes.
Okey doke. The motion passes. On to item number 10. This is the consideration of the landscaping and lighting assessment. Approval of engineers report. Mr. Kimball?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. So the Landscape and Lighting Assessment District is the mechanism that the city uses to pay for all streetlights throughout the town. So this is mostly utility costs and then also some repair and maintenance costs as well. This has been in effect since the early 1980s, 1981. So every year we have to come back and adopt an engineer's report. They identifies the cost of providing the total amount of the landscape and light, the street lights for the year, and then approve the assessment rate. In order to increase the assessment rate, we would need to go out to a ballot. Staff is not recommending that we do that at this time. There was the last time it went to ballot was in 2003, or the maximum assessment rate was approved in 2003. It has not been increased since then. However, staff has been taking taking measures to try to decrease the cost of lighting, including last year we were participating in a program through Edison to switch out all of our streetlights to LED. So the impact of that will be reduced utility costs over the long term, which should bring this the total cost of this down, and the assessment would then be enough eventually to cover that full cost. So tonight is just staff requesting council approve the engineer's report and allow us to move forward with the assessment for next fiscal year to pay for streetlights.
Excellent. And I know we've previously approved the methodology for assessments, right? So it's just continuing that. Okay, any questions from the council? Ms. Mendoza,
No questions or comments? Thank you.
Mr. Gonzalez,
None, and I'll move the item.
Ms. Ballin?
I second the motion.
Great. And I have just one quick question for Mr. Kimball. Are the assessments expected to be lower I'm sorry, are expenditures expected to be lower than our assessments going forward? Is this something that we'll have to do every year now?
So we do have to do it every year, regardless of whether
Oh, okay.
yeah, it's similar to the retirement tax that we have to set
Okay.
every year. Even if it's lower, we'll still have if costs end up being lower than what the assessment is, we still have to set the assessment. It would just be at a lower rate.
Got it. Okay, great. Thank you for the clarification. Okay, Ms. Fritz, if you please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor Joel Fajardo is absent. Vice Mayor Hector A. Pacheco,
Yes.
Councilmember Sylvia Ballin,
Yes.
Councilmember Robert C. Gonzalez,
Yes.
and Councilmember Mary Mendoza.
Yes.
And the motion carries. On to agenda item number 11, the resolution authorizing the treasurer and deputy treasurer to invest surplus funds. Mr. Kimball, please.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. And if I can, to speed things up, actually items 11 and 12 are essentially two peas in a pod. Item 11 is authorizing the city treasurer and deputy city treasurer as the city's investment agents. This is something that is required to be done annually by the California Government Code. So we need to adopt this resolution for the upcoming fiscal year to again allow the city treasurer and deputy city treasurer to invest any fund balance we may have. And then item 12 is the investment policy again that we have to abide by that we have to readopt every year per the government code. And it is a very conservative investment policy, and that's required by the government code. But this is what the treasurer and deputy city treasurer need to follow when they do invest surplus funds.
Okay, are there any objections to combining these two from the council or Ms. Padilla or anything?
Nope, I move both items. Combined.
I'll second.
They can be moved together.
Excellent. Okay, any questions then? Should I open up to any questions? We're all good?
No questions, no comments.
All right, that was easy. Ms. Fritz, please.
Mayor Joe Fajardo, he is absent. Vice Mayor Hector A. Pacheco,
Yes.
Councilmember Sylvia Ballin,
Yes.
Councilmember Robert C. Gonzalez,
Yes.
Councilmember Mary Mendoza.
Yes.
And the motion carries. Are we on 12 now? I'm sorry, Mr. Kimball.
No,
No, I'm sorry. We combined that one, right, with 11?
Yep.
Okay, obviously. All right, excellent. Now we're moving to staff communication with commission updates.
Yes, so we'll start with City Clerk Julia Fritz. I believe you have an update.
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair and council members. Let's see, the Education Commission has met and is awarding $5,000 in scholarships to 10 students who either attended a school in the city or live in the city. And the students will be honored through social media spotlights. Unfortunately, not the normal in-person balloons and cake. And once council meetings are open, they will be honored at a city council meeting.
Thank
That's the
you.
end of my report.
Thank you. Tim, do you have any updates?
Two quick updates. The first one, last week, the Planning and Preservation Commission met for their regular May meeting, and there was a discussion about the city's response to coronavirus, and we walked through the final part 3 of 3 of the Planning Commissioners training series that was produced by the American Planning Association, and we had a pretty good discussion led by Richard about legal ethics and legal considerations for planning commissioners. Second announcement, an email went out earlier today, but basically news was released over the weekend that the city had received an American Planning Association award from the LA chapter for an award of excellence for a comprehensive plan in a small jurisdiction. And if you look at the list of awardees, it's a very, very impressive list. So we're amongst just incredible company, at least in terms of the planning industry. So that's great news. The unfortunate part is usually that award gets recognized at a banquet gala that's put on by the APA LA folks. That's not happening this summer as it usually does every year. And the plan for that, my understanding is if there is going to be a celebration, it will be in the wintertime. Nonetheless, it's always good to pick up some hardware, and we'll have the opportunity to pick up that hardware in the next couple weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. And I just have a few updates. First, the Glen Oaks construction on Glen Oaks has started. It got delayed a little today because of the rain, but they're out there doing curb cuts and fixing sidewalks, curbs, and gutters as the first phase. And then probably, a month or so down the road is when they'll start sort of grinding and doing some of the major improvements to the road. The parks, with regards to commissions, you heard a couple. Planning and Education Commission have met. Staff's going to be surveying the Parks and Recreation Commissioners and the Transportation and Safety Commissioners to gauge their ability to meet. We resume commission meetings as well, and get those kicked off again. And then I will be reaching out in the next few days to council for support through community investment funds of a high school senior banner program. This kind of has come from a few different sources, but recreation staff has actually done a really great job, especially the ones that work with some of the teams. And they're kind of feeling bad for a lot of our seniors that aren't going to get the graduation that we all got to experience for that pinnacle. So they wanted to, they kind of took the lead in putting together a high school senior banner program similar to the Veterans Banner Program. So I will be reaching out for some funding requests to council in the next few days.
That's super cute. I love that idea.
No, I was happy to, recreation staff, they really took that to heart. So,
Thanks.
so and then lastly, again, I apologize. We had a few snafus with tonight's agenda. It was we had a lot of good items on there, though. I want to thank council for the great discussion that we had on a few of the items. I have a lot of notes and a lot of follow up. And just again, thank you for all the support from council on support of staff from council in our response to this pandemic. And this is new for all of us, so we're learning as we go. But I think staff's done a pretty good job of trying to keep ahead of it. And obviously we still have a lot of work to do, but we're going to try to really hone in on that number of cases and figure out what the deal is and we'll see where we can make some improvements so that we keep, San Fernando falls back to the middle of the pack.
Staff has done an amazing job, but there's so much more to do, right? One quick thing on the parks, Nick, could you just reiterate what's open, what's not open right now, and what people can expect? Just briefly.
So all park facilities, meaning the buildings, so Las Palmas Park building and Recreation Park building are closed to the public still until there is some additional relaxing of restrictions by the county order. Also, similarly, City Hall remains closed. We are working on plans for all three of those facilities when they do reopen. Presumably, early in June. We are already we already have plexiglass shields to protect staff. We already have protocols that we're working on to make sure that there's one-way walkways and sort of floor decals so that people can enforce social distancing. So the facilities are closed for now. We will be looking at potentially opening them as cooling centers when we get into the triple digits. So we're also developing protocols at the park facilities to open just on those occasions, not for recreational use, just to use for use at cooling centers when it's required. And then as far as the play equipment, that's still off limits. The covered patio areas are still off limits. All of the sport courts are still closed. What we can do is that people can use walk through the parks, use the picnic tables as long as they're very small groups or your family group. And so those are sort of some of the things that are open.
So outdoor tennis courts, outdoor basketball courts, those are all still closed?
That is, and Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe those are still closed in the order.
Basketball courts still closed. We have, I believe, one tennis court in the city in one of our public parks.
Pioneer.
Those can be opened. The thought there being that you're on opposite sides of the court, so
Right. Okay.
you're able to have some level of social distancing.
Great, thank you so much. Now we are at the portion of the meeting for general council comments and liaison updates. Ms. Mendoza?
Yeah, I have an update. I've been appointed to the Los Angeles County Selection Committee, as well as the Los Angeles County Library Commission. So I'm looking forward and participating in this, and also networking or contacting our local San Fernando library staff. And I'm just looking forward to being a part of that. Also want to thank Patty Lopez, former Assembly Member Patty Lopez, for the food distribution that we had in the San Fernando swap meet on May 2nd. Her and all of her donors did a great job in providing food for our needy families in the city. She is planning another one, so that information will be out later. But if anyone is interested in supporting her, they can contact her, contact City Hall for her contact information for providing any donations to her. So I appreciate what she's doing for our community. That's it.
Great, thank you, Ms. Mendoza. Mr. Gonzalez?
Thank you. Congratulations, Councilmember Mendoza. The Library Commission you can do amazing things on there. I loved serving on that board. That was probably one of my favorite boards that I've served on since being on City Council. So if you have any questions or comments or in any way that I can help you, please call me. I love that commission.
Thank you.
Malibu was a huge help to us while I was there. I'm not sure. I don't think they're on it anymore, but any way that we can help. And then also I'll talk about thank you so much for all the council for supporting the letter that was we signed off on today that was sent to ICA with California League of Cities. And then also good news, our banners, our veteran banners are finally up, and they will be up until November, and then that's when we will go with our second batch. And then I forget the date, escapes me now, when we will be accepting applications for the next round, but I know we'll do social media blasts and everything. But so the banners are up and they will stay up until November. The banners for our high school or for graduation, I think that's a great idea. Some of the happiest times of my life were graduating. And it's very unfortunate that some of these individuals will not have that opportunity. And then let me see here. I do believe that our numbers are so high because they're basing them on, they say the addresses, but a lot of these addresses have the zip code of San Fernando that are not in San Fernando. And I really do think that that's why our numbers are so high. I wish they were able to really narrow that down and tell us, concrete information if it is because of that or not, but I don't foresee them doing that. Also, organized sports. I know everyone's dying to get out there and play organized sports. I know my My hockey league has been on hold for so long, and I can't wait to get back out there. But we have to make sure that we are social distancing and we are doing this for everybody. It's not just for yourself; it's for everybody that's involved. And unfortunately, I did receive a complaint about an organized sports or team practicing in one of our facilities over the weekend. So I just want to make sure that we're notifying the individuals that are out there that they should not be playing organized sports. And I'm pretty sure it was without a permit because we're not offering permits for organized sports. And that if our employees or our police department is out doing rounds, please make sure that they're notifying these individuals of social distancing as well. And then let me see. I think that's it for me. And just congratulations and welcome to your first council meeting with us. And unfortunately, I haven't had the opportunity to sit and meet you, our new city clerk, but I have no idea when we'll be able to, because like Councilmember Balin said, it's so difficult not to go into City Hall and get business done. But I'm trying hard to avoid going into that place. But in some time, I will have the opportunity to meet you. So
Thank you very much.
Thanks everyone, staff especially, for all your help.
Mr. Gonzalez, I did want to ask, did you happen to have the update on the Burbank Airport noise by chance?
No,
Did you see how that one came out?
I did not see how it came out, but I do know that Nick did on our behalf send out the emails and left voicemails to speak during public comment. But I do not know. I can check back in and provide an update at the next council meeting.
Cool. Okay, thank you. Ms. Ballin?
Yeah, first I'd like to congratulate Tim. Great job, Tim. I really congratulate you. You're doing a really great job for our city, and I know you have a great team, and of course there's Nick. So we've got to congratulate all of you. I'm really proud of you guys. The other thing I'd like to talk about briefly is that May 2020 is Nursing Appreciation Month. Due to COVID-19 crisis, the American Nurses Association has extended Nurses Appreciation Week to Nurses Appreciation Month. And those that know anything about me know that my daughter's a nurse. And I worry every day about her. And I want to publicly thank the Sunland, Tahunga, Shadow Hills Rotary Club, who contributed some, she said, very high quality face shields to High Valley Lodge Nursing Home in Sun Valley, in Sunland. I'm very grateful. And Julia, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to send a letter to the Rotary Club and let them know that I publicly ask that, thank them. And many organizations have contributed. But for me, this is the first time I've heard of someone contributing what I'm going to consider locally. And I know that it's happened, but this is the first one I have heard of. And I'm very grateful. That's one little more piece of protection for my daughter and all the other health professionals that work at that nursing home. So I'm just truly grateful about that. And Nick, I want to ask you a question about the evictions. Then we have the resolution that no one's to be evicted up until May 31st. They couldn't be evicted. What is it? What are the rules? I forgot already, Nick. And you're on silent.
You go ahead, Rich, if you want.
I believe, if I recall correctly, the council elected to follow, to take no action as to residential evictions, but I think there was action to prevent commercial evictions, to have a local eviction ordinance. Nick, if you don't mind, since the topic has come up, would you like me to mention what the action the county recently took?
Actually, so Tim went out, I know Tim worked on a reference sheet, but basically you had to be, you had to be, it wasn't just no evictions straight out. You had to be, no evictions due to non-payment of rent because you were impacted by COVID for a number of reasons. But Tim, if you have your reference sheet handy.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so basically it prohibited a landlord from starting an eviction process for non-payment of rent and extended until May 31st. It required a commercial and residential tenants that they notify a property owner within 7 days of the rent being due and demonstrate a financial impact due to COVID-19. And in order to, tenants would then have 180 days, 6 months, to repay all outstanding rent. And to qualify, a tenant would need to provide documentation of some COVID-19 related impact.
So thank you, Tim. And so Rich, I think what Rich was about to mention is that the county subsequently had some eviction protections that were a little bit more lenient as far as repayment terms. I think it was 1 year, Rich. But if you had your own eviction, for cities
Right,
and
so-
counties have their own eviction ordinance.
So the county did the wonderful backward step of finally coming up with an eviction moratorium that could apply to cities. Their eviction moratorium had previously only applied to unincorporated county of LA. The only caveat is that the county ordinance doesn't apply to your city if your city already has local protections in place. So for those cities that were proactive and ran to adopt local ordinances, those ordinances will remain in place so long as they choose to keep, so long as city councils choose to keep them in place. Those cities that did nothing are now under the purview of the county, which allows, it applies to both commercial and residential. It gives them up to a year to pay rent. Actually addresses some of the issues that I think were brought up by some of the council members regarding evictions due to pets being brought into the house and additional occupancies as a result of families doubling up. So from the standpoint of a tenant, there is a lot to like in the county ordinance now. Some cities with that in mind have considered whether or not to repeal their local ordinances and simply allow their residents to be under the county ordinance. I can tell you for the 2 client cities that we represent, other client cities that have taken up that issue, it hasn't been a slam dunk. I think there's been a lot of debate on both sides about whether to just leave well enough alone and leave their local ordinance in place versus just kind of repealing it and allowing the county protections to just kind of sweep in prospectively. So that's kind of the long and the short of it in terms of the county's actions.
So I'm just wondering, can you send us the ordinance that we voted on? I forgot what it said.
Yeah, I think
I'd like to read it.
Yeah. Mhm.
And that's a good point because we may want to consider on June 1st whether we want to extend that or that ordinance past May 31st.
Right.
Yeah, I am concerned. So if you would send that to us, that'd give us a chance to think about it. And again, I just like to thank everyone for the hard work. This is very exhausting to have to do this via Zoom. I've learned to not really particularly like doing business this way. It's a challenge.
Agreed.
Okay, any other comments or questions, Ms. Ballin?
No.
Great, and I just have a couple brief updates. Mr. Gonzalez and I have been working diligently with Mr. Kimball and Martin before he left on the tree fund that we established last year. We have been able to plant 13 trees along San Fernando Road, which will give some much needed shade for that street. And it looks like we will be able to offer many more fruit trees for our fruit tree giveaway, which I believe should be postponed until fall. And we will also have funds available to plant many more trees along Glen Oaks as we continue the Glen Oaks restoration project. Also, I would like to congratulate Zoe Rodriguez and Mike Garcia, who are two of the recipients for the Education Commission scholarships. I'm very excited to meeting you both and to having some sort of ceremony, even if it's a bit unorthodox. Beyond that, I also would like to thank staff. It seems like we're on a roll with getting these grants. You should be very much commended, and I thank you for your hard work. And with that, I will make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Excellent.
Good
Ms.
night,
Fritz,
everyone.
please. Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Okay,
Mr. Padilla?
Oh, no, I was just saying good night. I don't know. I guess
Oh.
we're gonna take.
really quick, I'll call roll.
Sure.
Mayor Joe Fajardo is absent. Vice Mayor Hector A. Pacheco,
Yes.
Councilmember Sylvia Ballin,
Yes.
Councilmember Robert C. Gonzalez,
Yes.
and Councilmember Mary Mendoza.
Yes.
Meeting's adjourned at 9.